Hello and welcome to Chinese Novel Audiobook. Explore our playlist for more captivating novels, and don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new audiobook. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 61, Recycling Center. July 12th. The average surface temperature reaches 75 degrees. Animals that once occasionally appeared on the surface were completely extinct. Even humans standing at the top of the planet's food chain cannot move directly on the surface except driving modified vehicles or wearing special insulation suits. And it's this hot and ordinary day. Suburbs of Zhonghe City. Deep in the rocky beach that no one noticed. A small refuge completed its most important transformation since its construction began. From handmade, we have truly entered the field of industrial manufacturing. Self-test is completed. Each component is in normal condition. Start power on operation. A slight buzzing sounded. A pile of scrap iron that was dismantled was slowly sent from the conveyor belt into the high-temperature furnace. Then, the electricity consumption of the entire industrial equipment recycling center immediately began to soar. Then after reaching the peak, nearly 90% of the power generation of two geothermal generators was extracted. There may be certain dangers during operation. Su Wu did not appear at the site of the recycling center. Instead, stay in the control center and watch remotely through the monitoring screen. But it was said to be a ritual, but in fact the entire process only took a few seconds. Then there is a long heating process that lasts more than 12 hours. It will take a long time to see the first batch of iron ingots that have been remelted. Participated in the launch ceremony. Su Wu turned his eyes to the data of the high-temperature furnace displayed on the console screen. I felt a little pressure in my heart. This operating state consumes too much power. The high-temperature furnace currently in use consumes about 500 degrees per hour. After completing the initial preheating process, the production speed of melting about 1 ton of waste steel can be achieved in 1 hour. The output is quite large, but the electricity consumed is also tremendously huge. Basically, as long as the high-temperature furnace is turned on at full power, Su Wu's refuge, you will not think about opening any other new large-scale industrial equipment that requires power support. In the entire industrial equipment recycling center, there are more than one high-temperature furnace installed. There are at least 5 other high-temperature furnaces for smelting other metals and materials. With the current power generation of Su Wu Sanctuary, it is completely impossible to support their operation at the same time. You can only switch to use in turn. The geothermal resources in this area are also consumed almost the same. Unless it will go deeper into the ground, or to other areas. Otherwise, there will be no new geothermal generators. Faced with the problem of power shortage, Su Wu first thought of directly increasing the number of geothermal generators. But the reality after actual exploration was told to him with cold data. This method no longer works. Geothermal resources are also resources, but resources have their limits. Near the shelter, at most 2 geothermal generators can be allowed. Except for geothermal generators, any other method Su Wu can find is either too risky or the electricity obtained is extremely limited. It basically doesn't work. Put it first and stick with it. Wait for the shelter to develop for a while. Just go out and explore new strongholds and find mineral sources. The new stronghold may not be the place of residence, but may also be an unattended resource collection site. Used to collect all valuable materials such as electricity, ore, etc. Before Su Wu had no ability to build nuclear power plants, or other higher power plants. Going outside to build more geothermal power stations and thermal power stations is the best and only choice. Thinking about the issue of power supply, Su Wu switched to the overall 3-dimensional map of the shelter. The environments at all levels are inspected and analyzed using sensors spread throughout the shelter. With the official operation of the industrial recycling center, inevitably, a large amount of toxic gases and various other wastes will be produced. Even when the recycling center was first established, a complete set of purification and filtration systems had been completed. But the shelter is an extremely limited and enclosed underground building after all. Any small accident is enough to brew a huge disaster. No mistakes, 1 song, 1 content, 1 in 6, 1 book, 1 bar, 1 reading. No matter how cautious it is not an exaggeration to prevent it. After inspecting it, I found no problems. Su Wu weighed the pros and cons again. It was decided to establish a wall and a double isolation passage near the recycling center. Completely physically isolated from the rest of the fourth floor. In addition, the ventilation ducts for the recycling center are also independent of the air circulation system of the entire shelter. Directly connected to the surface. No direct contact with other places in the shelter. In this way, the recycling center can actually be regarded as a separate module independent of the shelter. Even if any uncontrollable accidents and disasters occur in the recycling center, it will be difficult to affect the body of the shelter. Next, it's time to start a real expansion plan for shelter. After dealing with the matter of the recycling center, Su Wu turned his attention to CNC machine tools and 3D printers that were temporarily suspended. After the high-temperature furnace occupied about 90% of the electricity in the shelter. These two manufacturing equipment do not have enough power for direct startup. It is necessary to temporarily extract the reserved power from the high-energy battery pack to continue to operate normally. But this is just a small matter. The power reserved by high-energy battery packs is as high as 10,000 degrees. It is completely enough to assist CNC machine tools and 3D printers, and operate at full power for several days. It will not affect the manufacturing tasks assigned by Su Wu. First, we need to redesign the vehicle size in the engineering team. In the engineering team, whether it is an excavator, a transport vehicle, or a more professional gravel truck, etc. In fact, they were all temporary emergency products that Su Wu was not allowed to choose when he was short of resources in the early stage. Now, since you have mastered higher productivity and have more raw material reserves, then using micro-series construction vehicles is a bit of a waste. After all, regardless of the size of the vehicle, there will be no big difference between the core chip and the high-energy battery that control it. And these two are the only two core components that Su Wu cannot produce at present. In other words, whether it is to build a micro-series of vehicles or a larger series of vehicles, the survival points consumed will basically not be different. However, their working efficiency is likely to be several times different, or even dozens of times. More than a dozen related drawings were retrieved from the database for reference. Su Wu used the drawing software to modify it all the way. The new version of the design drawings will be finalized soon. Chapter 62 Aurora and Omen. In the new version, the length of the mini excavator has increased from 1.5 meters to 4.4 meters. The soil that can be excavated by the bucket increases from 0.04 cubic meters to 0.2 cubic meters each time. The overall construction efficiency has been improved by about 5 times. This brand new excavator can no longer be described as mini, but can be changed to the word small. It has truly become a professional construction tool, a powerful tool for construction in the industrial era. The size of the miniature transport vehicle has grown even more exaggeratedly. The length of the vehicle increased from less than 2 meters to 6 meters. It can carry up to nearly 20 cubic meters of cargo and weighs 50 tons. This new transport vehicle named Ore Type is used to transport 1 trip of earth and stone, which is enough for the micro-transport vehicle to run 7 or 8 trips back and forth. And as the size grows, it can also be equipped with a stronger electric engine. The driving speed has also been improved to a certain extent, basically reaching 50 kilometers per hour. This speed can almost be used as the main vehicle for long-distance transportation, freeing large trucks from the task of transporting scrap metal and construction waste in urban areas. After all, those things are originally garbage. Not afraid of high temperatures, nor fear of damage from any other extreme climate. Transportation using a fully enclosed temperature-insulated carriage with large trucks is somewhat suspected of luxury and waste. The open-type ore transport truck is just professional. Suppress costs to a minimum. As for the gravel cart, there is nothing to say. Simply expand its size in proportion to obtain more efficient ability to break rocks. Make 2 new gravel cars first. Then we will make 4 small excavators and ore transport vehicles separately. Deliver the brand new design drawings to artificial intelligence. Su Wu carefully arranged the first batch of manufacturing tasks for CNC machine tools and 3D printers. The size and efficiency of all new construction vehicles have been greatly improved, and it also means that the materials they consume have also increased significantly. In the case where almost all qualified ordinary metal materials have been put into construction of industrial equipment recycling centers, the materials that can be used to manufacture new versions of vehicles are extremely limited. Therefore, Suwu must give priority to allocating the number and model of the first batch of production vehicles according to the severity of the task and the efficiency. Wait until the manufacturing is completed. The gravel trucks have all joined the engineering team to speed up the excavation of the fifth underground space. I won't say anything else. At least you have to dig out the territory of a large warehouse first. Then, small excavators and ore-type transporter. Half was divided into two and joined the engineering team, and the other half went out to support the scavenging convoy in the city. Due to scale and power supply reasons, the high-temperature furnace in the recycling center can only melt at most 10 to 20 tons of scrap metal a day. If you need to melt other different metals and materials, you must also use another furnace. The efficiency has been further greatly reduced. And corresponding to this, the scrap metal transported back by the scavenging convoy every day is at least 40 tons. In addition, in order to compete with other shelters, Suwu is still working hard to increase the scale of the scavenging convoy. One by one, the difference between these will only grow bigger and bigger. That's why, before the accumulated scrap metal fills the inside of the small bunker on the ground, it is now the most important thing to find a warehouse that can accommodate. After all, even if it is scrap metal, it is not low for Suwu. You cannot place it rashly on the surface of the ground and open the sky. So keep following the steps. In a short time, it should be possible to build an underground shelter at the town level. The plan completed by General Suwu will be delivered to artificial intelligence to wait for implementation. He leaned against the soft back of the chair and breathed a little relaxed. And at this moment, from the corner of his eyes, he seemed to have captured a strange purple light from the surveillance wall. Looking up, Suwu looked at the source of the light and found them from the sky outside the shelter. The purple light layer by layer penetrated the haze clouds that were several kilometers thick. It hangs over the sky like a gauze woven from a spindle. Aurora. Suwu really wanted to describe it like this. But those purple skylights were like the dark and bottomless abyss. No mistakes, one song, one content, 1 in 6, one book, one bar, one reading. As soon as he saw it, he couldn't help but feel a trembling and fear from the bottom of his heart. That feeling is like an animal encountering a natural enemy. Or maybe you know that you are facing radiation, your whole body and mind are tightly held by terror and despair. At this moment, even if there is no evidence yet, Suwu still subconsciously determined that this would definitely not be a good thing. Reorient your sitting posture. Suwu connected the home screen in front of the console to the ground surveillance camera. Control it to adjust the angle slightly. Incorporate the horizon and the sky further away. In a wider field of view, endless purple light descended from the sky, rendering the wilderness slightly discolored. And at some point, it is located near the mountain range on the other side. A group of unknown birds flap their wings from the mountains. Then, before it took off for long, under the terrible high temperature in the air, it quickly exhausted its energy and fell to the ground one after another. At the same time, the latecomers of these birds seemed to have not seen the experience of their predecessors, and still rushed to the sky with all their might. Until I fell to the end of my life, there was no change at all. Suwu witnessed this scene throughout the whole process, and his eyes were covered with a layer of haze. My heart was lingered by the intense uneasiness that came from nowhere. After a full silence for more than 10 seconds, Suwu made some moves again. He manipulated the surveillance camera and continued to patrol the surface of the shelter. From hills of construction waste to small towering bunkers, to shelter exits covered by bunkers. Finally, I saw a miniature transport vehicle carrying earth and rocks slowly driving out of the bunker, and then my eyes moved slightly. It's not safe enough here. Suwu pondered. Pull out the 3D map of the shelter and stop the mouse's light spot at the exit channel. Since the engineering team needs to continuously transport the excavated soil and rocks to the ground, the exit passage of the shelter needs to be opened frequently. Although it will be closed immediately after opening the transport vehicle every time it is opened. But this can't resist the opening and closing times too many times. The total opening time accumulated every day is not a small number that can be ignored. And in this way, if you encounter any sudden accident, for example, the raid of an armed team that could bypass surveillance and lurk to the door of the shelter, or all kinds of natural disasters without warning, etc., the open door to shelter will likely become a fatal weakness. Chapter 63 Reverse Research. Then I think of the faint uneasiness that the purple skylight brought him outside the shelter at this moment. Su Wu's conservative idea became stronger. After reinforcing the exit passage, let's close it for the time being. There will not be opened again unless necessary in the future. Then the engineering team opened a vertically upward passage from the 5th floor underground. A lift is installed for that passage, specifically for transporting soil and rocks. It is different from the first 4 floors of the shelter, as the engineering team is about to add a large number of huge construction equipment. Originally, the first floor of the shelter had an area of 600 square meters and a height of 6 meters, which seemed a bit narrow. And it cannot perform the performance of the new version of the construction vehicle. Therefore, at the beginning of design, Su Wu simply expanded the area of the 5th floor by 5 times and increased the height to 12 meters. Such a wide space. Of course, it also staggered most of the positions with the 4 floors above. A separate vertical channel to the outside world is established with conditions. And in this way, it is actually equivalent to temporarily separating the 5th floor underground from the entire shelter body. Even if there is any accident outside, I broke in through the vertical channel. At most, it can only destroy the 5th underground floor being excavated, which will not have much impact on the first 4 closed floors. The engineering team that received Su Wu's latest order suspended the ongoing excavation work. Start looking for locations in place and build new vertical passages. At the same time, the engineering robots affiliated to the engineering team led 2 construction robots to the shelter exit passage. On the side of the outlet passage close to the lifting platform, that is, the innermost part of the outlet passage, the metal door there is reinforced and thickened. By the way, 3 hidden shooting platforms were installed on the walls and ceiling outside the door. It is used to play some defensive role when an enemy accidentally breaks into the passage. The shelter gate at the outermost exit passage slowly closes with the slight sound of mechanical gear rotation after the miniature transporter that had transported the soil and rocks back. The reinforcement of the exit channel location is expected to be completed in 1 hour and 17 minutes. It's such a short time. Nothing should go wrong. I took a look at the construction schedule sent back by artificial intelligence. Su Wu was still worried. However, this emotion is not strong. After all, even during construction, the outermost door of the exit passage has been closed. Even if it is really dangerous, it will definitely give him enough reaction time to deal with it. As for the vertical passage of the 5th floor, its construction progress is a little irrelevant. Anyway, they are all driverless mechanical equipment. A little earlier or later will not affect Su Wu's own safety. In addition, a batch of monitoring and early warning devices must be placed outside. I don't say it's a big deal. At least, when you encounter problems, you can know earlier and have more time to deal with them. The purple light comes from the sky, which means that danger may also come from the natural environment. In this case, it is undoubtedly a bit stupid to limit your attention to your own shelter. Su Wu must try to put his sight further away. This kind of thing. It might be a bit difficult in the past, and Su Wu couldn't come up with so many cameras and detection devices. But now, after the 3D printer can print some micron-scale chips. Camera and sensors, common electronic devices that are not complicated, have become cheap items that can be mass-produced at will. Enter a command on the console. Send relevant manufacturing tasks to 3D printers and give them priority to manufacturing. Su Wu opened the logging record of the manufacturing center on the 2nd floor of the underground. Turn to the research page. A obviously incomplete drone design drawing appears in the center of the screen. As the research progress only 72%. It's a bit slow. Su Wu frowned, realizing that it is difficult to reversely study the design drawings of drones by relying on only one engineering robot to disassemble them manually. Different from those previously produced open-source products that have been made with simple structures, lag behind the times, or related technologies have long been published on the internet. Drones, especially commercial-grade drones with good flight speed and load capacity. The trade secrets of some high-tech companies have been involved. Even artificial intelligence cannot find relevant design drawings on the internet. No mistakes, one song, one content, 1 in 6, one book, one bar, one reading. In this case, you want to use a CNC machine tool or a 3D printer to copy the drone. It is necessary to draw a detailed design drawing through project research on drones. The main difficulty. It's stuck in chips, solid-state batteries, and material ratios. I took a closer look at several main places that stuck in the research progress. Suwoo knew that it was already a luxury to draw the drawings in a short period of time. He sighed and gave up the idea of self-producing. Instead, open the list of materials warehouses. Focus on one of the universal-grade drones with a load of 5 kg. This general-purpose drone with good load and flight speed is in stock in the warehouse. Remodel a little to enhance the heat dissipation capability. It should be able to be used for emergency use. Just choose them. Time was in Suwoo's somewhat anxious mood, and more than an hour passed. As the outlet passage is reinforced, it is completely closed. And the first batch of various detectors suitable for the field were printed out one after another by 3D printers. His mood finally gradually calmed down. No matter what kind of disaster he is going to face, at least his refuge is becoming stronger and safer bit by bit. The drone lift platform has been activated. Closing square bracket. Universal UAV completed loading. Closing square bracket. Start into takeoff procedure. Closing square bracket. On the console's large main control screen. Lines of prompt information from artificial intelligence are constantly refreshing. Cold and orderly text. It creates a somewhat solemn atmosphere, just like being in the command center of the rocket launch site. But it is precisely this solemnity and stability that makes Suwoo feel an extra safe. This is his power. On the surface, just below the small bunker. The two robotic arms put the folded detectors, cameras, signal repeaters, etc. into the airdrop cabin under the general-purpose drone. Until the lights representing load on a universal drone, it turns from green to yellow. Then stop moving and allow it to pass through the conveyor belt and enter the drone lifting platform. Then continue loading the next universal drone. Highly automated and standardized operations bring extremely high efficiency. Chapter 64 The monitoring network spread out. Start with the official start of the program. On average, every 20 seconds, a general-purpose drone carries several detection-related equipment, takes a lift from the shelter to the rooftop of the small bunker, and then rises into the air. The ambient temperature is normal. Closing square bracket. Wind speed is lower than the alert value. Closing square bracket. The drone began to lower the altitude and deploy detection equipment. Closing square bracket. On the surveillance screens that are divided in front of the console that are connected to the drone, you can clearly see that they hover in the air for a few minutes. After finding the right position, they begin to gradually closer to the ground. Then when the height is reduced to about 1 meter from the ground, the general-purpose drone will launch a detection device. The artificial intelligence far behind will activate the detection device on the spot after detecting that it touches the ground and incorporate it into the detection network of the entire shelter. Suwoo sat in front of the console and looked from his perspective. On the three-dimensional map in the center of the main control screen, green spots are gradually lit up with the continuous launch of 5 general-class drones. Then, overall, it began to expand outward bit by bit. These green light spots have strong and weak light. The strong are sparse in number, and the spacing between them is roughly equal, forming a grid-like pattern. With the shelter as the center, it spreads outwards one by one. They are signal repeaters that are responsible for uniformly transmitting and sending data collected by peripheral detectors back to the shelter. With these communication nodes, Suwoo can ignore the distance and lay the detectors to Zhonghe city urban areas, or even further away. Weak green light spots occupy most of the number. Among them are wireless cameras, anemometers, monitors that collect various geological activity data, and even special instruments that can analyze the composition of air and soil, as well as detect radiation. They are responsible for monitoring the sky, ground and underground surroundings around the shelter. All monitoring data is sent regularly to all the surrounding signal repeaters that can be received. And with this network of green light spots, then, with the help of artificial intelligence, organize and analyze the massive amount of data they send back. Suwu was able to receive a warning as soon as possible for all the abnormal movements in the surrounding environment of the shelter. More than 2 hours later, thousands of various detectors have successfully included every inch of land within 10 kilometers of the shelter in a strict monitoring range. And beyond this distance, if you continue to monitor indiscriminately, the cost will increase dramatically. In this regard, Suwu's choice was to shrink it into 3 straight lines, like laying rails, extending towards the mountains to the north, the urban area of Zhonghe City to the east, and the plains to the southwest. On that line in the city, because of the day and night activities of the scavenging convoy, coupled with the competition from other shelters. Although the entire environment looks mainly composed of collapsed ruins, it is full of traces of destruction and disaster. But there is always a hint of vitality inside. Perhaps for the parties involved, the working environment may be not very good, or even quite harsh. But for Suwu, a place where people are active and some work is enough to make people feel at ease. And at the same time, on the plains and the mountains, silence is the only theme. The roads along the way are basically covered with mess of gravel and dust. Houses on the roadside either collapsed or simply disappeared without a trace. After careful calculation, it has only been more than a month since humans relocated to underground shelters on a large scale. At most, I experienced a super large storm. These places are quickly erasing traces of human existence at an astonishing speed. When the monitoring network enters the mountains, the pictures Suwu saw through the camera were even more depressing. The rocks and soil burned by fire and the ashes of plants and trees are mixed together to form the entire surface world that can be seen. Occasionally I see some weird patterns burned by fireworks. It also makes people feel like they are in an alien star and in a horror movie scene. But this is just an illusion derived from silence. In fact, there will be no monsters or even beasts suddenly appearing here. The terrifying high temperature in the air treats all life equally. At this moment, the most important enemies of all life are not each other, but nature. The mountainous areas in the end of the world. It doesn't seem like a good place. Suwu felt a little uncomfortable with the depression revealed on the screen. He turned his sight and looked at the data transmitted from some detectors that had been installed into the mountains. As an ordinary person, he actually doesn't understand those data very well. But it doesn't matter, artificial intelligence translation, he just needs to look at the results directly. The detection results show no mistakes, 1 song, 1 content, 1 in 6, 1 book, 1 bar, 1 reading. Within a nearby kilometer, there are still a small number of traces of human activity deep inside the mountains. In other words, humans survived in the mountains. At this time, they may also be using various methods to silently watch the general-purpose drone flying into the mountains. So there are still people so close. Suwu's originally tense nerves relaxed slightly because of this fact. He breathed out, thought for a while, and did not try to contact those people. But with a slightly different mood, we continue to pay attention to the general drone-laying monitoring lines in the mountains. Evening. The monitor farthest from Suwu Sanctuary has reached the depths of the mountains 40 kilometers away. There is also a surveillance camera that can also faintly capture the edge buildings of the next county town. This allowed Suwu to master a large amount of first-hand data. A small limestone mine that has not been mined was even discovered. That thing is the main material for making cement. If it can be mined, Suwu's shelter will never be lacking in cement for a considerable period of time in the future. It's a pity that the location is deep in the mountains, and there is not even a decent road. Mining is a bit difficult. Suwu was a little greedy. Of course, think about it from another perspective. If mining is really easy, it will not be his turn to peak. It has long been guaranteed by the government and large enterprises. The small limestone mine location was marked on the map. Suwu temporarily put this small episode on hold. They began to log into their own internet and official satellite networks respectively. I plan to see if I can find some useful information. The internet is no different from the past, and a group of people still do whatever they should do. Play games, upload daily life in the shelter, share tips for passing time, forum quarrels, and more. Chapter 65 The Social Circle of Powerful People. No one realized that there was an unsettling abnormality in the sky outside the shelter. This may also be related to their identities. After all, there are a few people who can enter and exit shelters at will and who are qualified to access external information. As long as you have the heart, the people in the power of the refuge can easily break down relevant channels of knowledge. The land covering a radius of 15 kilometers. It's still a little small. Su Wu looked at it for a while and felt like he was wandering in the small pond in his backyard. There are so few valuable things that can be found. Shaking his head, he switched to the satellite network to connect to the local channel of Linjianghe City. In this official host, it is basically a place where senior officials of various shelters join. The discussion on the purple light in the sky is quite enthusiastic. It can be seen from the conversations of these people. Not only Su Wu, they also have an unknown premonition about the purple light in the sky. And in order to deal with this disaster that I don't know what form it will happen. After someone took the lead. Many people shared the information they had, trying to ask more people to help analyze it to see if there is any possibility of finding a clue. Su Wu opened the check one by one. From the content of these intelligences, we can almost see the gap between the uploaders, that is, the shelter behind them. As small as a personal shelter for only one or two people, or one or two families, the information provided is generally various phenomena they observe in their own shelter. Larger shelters will provide information about a range of hundreds of meters around the shelter. Then, the larger the scale of enterprise-level shelters, the wider the area outside the shelter, and the more professional the intelligence provided. It's not just the phenomenon that can be observed by the eyes and cameras. They also provide more detailed seismic wave detection, chemical sample detection, air composition detection, and more. Su Wu did not take a closer look at these data. After a quick glance, they were packaged and handed over to the database of artificial intelligence. Let artificial intelligence perform analysis on his behalf. After a little consideration, he uploaded all the data he collected. Because most of these data are too professional, it has no effect on ordinary people. However, it is quite precious for large shelters with technical teams. After all, before this, in the entire Zhonghe city, except for the official shelter, there were almost no private shelter, which could conduct large-scale data collection within a range of 40 kilometers. And no surprises. After Su Wu uploaded the data, he immediately won a lot of praise in the chat channel. Even if many of them don't understand the meaning of these data. But they only need to know that it is enough for people who can provide such professional data to be big shots. If you have a good relationship with the boss, even if you just make the boss look a little familiar with yourself, you may get some benefits in the future. Su Wu was in a very good mood as he browsed these compliments. After all, 2 or 3 months ago, he was just an ordinary person. As an ordinary person, it is inevitable that there will be some vanity in front of others. And just then, he suddenly received an invitation to join a new chat group. The invitation is a Chaoyang shelter. Can this chat channel still attract people to build small groups? Su Wu was a little confused. He had already studied it before, and the official chat channel was so simple that it was almost simple. There are no additional features except sending text and pictures. As for Chaoyang Sanctuary, Su Wu is not unfamiliar with this name. His predecessor was a famous large enterprise group in Zhonghe City, involving heavy assets and labor-intensive industries such as textiles, metallurgy, etc. The chairman of the group has become the richest man in Zhonghe City for several years. With curiosity and inquiry in mind, Su Wu clicked to agree. Then I found myself being pulled into a chat group with more than 30 members. Most of the members in the group are both familiar and unfamiliar. I am familiar with it because they are basically related to some famous large commercial companies in Zhonghe City. Strange means that I have basically never communicated with them before. Even in the official chat channel, Su Wu has never seen them speak out. However, Su Wu really didn't know any of them in the entire group. He saw a member of the small group of refugees that the steel factory manager pulled him into before the world's internet was cut off. According to the news that Su Wu received at that time, the members of this small group were a second-generation official with a deep background. Before the end of the world, he also opened a company with a market value of nearly 1 billion. No mistakes, 1 song, 1 content, 1 in 6, 1 book, 1 bar, 1 reading. Of course, Su Wu only knows so much. In that small group, this second-generation official acted very cold and low-key, and Suwu never saw him say a few words from beginning to end. The only few appearances were all communicating with Wang Jiangguo, and basically ignored others. Welcome to our communication platform. Mr. Suwu's refuge has provided us with more than 17,000 effective geological exploration information after a change in the air today. The farthest place involves its shelter 40 kilometers away. It is a refuge with very strong technical capabilities and material reserves. Invite Suwu to join the group and hold the account of Fu Yongyuan, the Chaoyang shelter. A brief congratulations were sent to Suwu. It is not only to welcome him in, but also to explain why the others in the group were invited to join. And after Fu Yongyuan finished speaking, a few people in the group immediately greeted Suwu politely. This also includes the once cold second-generation official. Suwu responded to them patiently. These people are potential big customers. From then on, the vegetables, poultry and some industrial products produced in his shelter could be sold to them. It should be able to earn a lot of resources. After spending more than 10 minutes to adapt to the atmosphere in this small group, Suwu is planning to quit the internet and continue to check if there are any mistakes in the shelter. An account with the name of Zhonghe City Municipal Department. Suddenly a video conference was launched. The function of this video conferencing is also something Suwu had never seen in the satellite network before. It can be seen that the official satellite network is not simple in functions or lacks the ability to provide better services. It just won't be open to ordinary people like Suwu. An irrelevant association flashed through my mind. Suwu did not make any comments, but just clicked on the invitation and silently joined the video conference. Subscribe to Chinese Novel Audiobook YouTube channel. Chapter 66 Radiation Disaster. In the conference room. When Suwu came in, more than half of them were already online. Another small number of people arrived quickly within 1 or 2 minutes. Apart from Suwu, the worst person who can appear in this conference room also has a large shelter with tens of thousands of people. Time is mostly precious. Therefore, the account of Zhonghe Municipal Department of Municipal Affairs, which was chaired by the meeting. After a brief introduction, go straight to the topic. Everyone, I am Oshihua, Minister of the Municipal Department of Zhonghe City. This time everyone is called because it is based on the latest news sent by the Federal Academy of Sciences. In the next 2 to 5 days, our Dongzhou region will usher in an unprecedented radiation storm. At that time, the average radiation intensity in the surface air is expected to exceed 1,000 times the normal safety limit. Radiation disasters will also break out in some areas, releasing millions of times the safety limit in a very small range. And all we need to do is find out in advance where these radiation disasters may occur. There is no best, and if there is any, it can also be taken promptly. Oshihua's speech caused silence in the conference room. Everyone was thinking about what impact this sudden disaster would have on them. A few seconds later, a participant asked a question. Is there any specific boundary for the scope and duration of the radiation disaster outbreak? The range is between dozens of meters and thousands of meters. No more than 3 kilometers radius at most. But it is not certain in quantity. Take our Zhonghe City location as an example, there may be no one, and there may be more than 10 radiation disaster areas. In addition, this radiation storm is expected to last for a long time, and everyone should be prepared to coexist with it for a long time. Oshihua's answer without hesitation. These data are about life and death. Even if you didn't recite them deliberately beforehand, they are simply engraved in the depths of his mind. There is no need to check it on site. In addition to radiation, will there be other secondary disasters? Another attendee then asked. It is not generally possible, but the temperature at the location of the radiation disaster that broke out may rise sharply in a short period of time, reaching a maximum of between 200 and 300 degrees. According to the Academy of Sciences evaluation, some shelters located in shallow underground may not be able to cope with the threat of radiation disaster. The best way is to move out early. The information revealed in Oshihua's speech immediately made people feel excited. You should know that the shelter for most people present is built with reference to the standards of underground shopping malls and air raid shelters. Even if it is strengthened, it will be only 30 or 50 meters above the ground. Still not out of the shallow category. Once the unlucky one happens to encounter a radiation disaster, it means that the shelter will be scrapped on the spot. Suwu also looked extremely solemn when he heard this. Compared to others, his first floor of the shelter is closer to the surface, with an average distance of only 10 meters. The only slightly better one is the air circulation and cooling system of the shelter, as well as the concrete walls, which have been strengthened and upgraded by the survival point. Able to cope with more harsh environments. But even so, if the radiation disaster really broke out over his shelter, it's no different from a huge threat. So, how should we find the location where these radiation disasters may break out in advance? Zhou Bin, the second-generation official who had barely met with Su Wu in the past, was not affected by panic. He calmly asked the most critical question directly. The radiation disaster won't break out suddenly. There will be a buffer period lasting 1 to 2 days before it appears. During the buffer period, the radiation value of the outbreak site will be about 1% to 1,000 higher than the surrounding area, and the lowest will not be less than 1,000th. Such searches can be quite labor-intensive because of possible errors in measurements. So, I hope everyone can support it with all their strength. The issue of Zhou Bin, the second-generation official, is actually the main purpose of Oshihua's convening this meeting. It is not impossible to monitor the entire Zhonghe city by relying solely on the official shelter. But in that case, the movement will be too huge. The resources consumed are also too high. Distributing part of the task to a powerful refuge among the people will not be much different, but it can effectively reduce monitoring costs. No mistakes, one song, one content, 1 in 6, one book, one bar, one reading. Then what good can we do? A participant asked about the thoughts of most of the people present. The radiation disaster is terrible, but if you only focus on monitoring the vicinity of your own shelter, it is actually enough early warning and there is no need for too many resources. But judging from the attitude Oshihua put forward, it is obviously impossible to have such low requirements for them. And to let them bear more non-essential responsibilities, they naturally have to come up with conditions that will make them excited. First, by the size of the contribution value. Everyone can get 1 or more guaranteed tickets. If the situation reaches its worst in the future, there will be more than 10 radiation disasters in Zhonghe City. Then we will give up most of the existing shelters and go into deep shelters in full. We will even leave Zhonghe City directly and relocate to other safer urban shelters nearby. As the current limited space for deep shelter, it is also extremely difficult to transfer across cities and distances. So the number of people who are eligible to relocate is quite limited in the end. Each guaranteed ticket you have obtained can allow one person to enter our deep shelter or join the cross-city travel team when the situation is so bad that it is uncontrollable in the future. This is one of the benefits. It is considered a basic life guarantee provided by the official for these private people who have huge resources. As long as everyone present takes some of the official tasks a little serious, it will not be difficult to accumulate tickets to allow themselves and their families to save their lives at the last moment. Of course, this can only be considered as a guaranteed guarantee, or a basic benefit. No one who can attend this conference will be simply moved by these tickets to save lives. If you lose the foundation and resources to settle down, even if you can save your life by chance this time, you will immediately face the risk of class decline. At that time, the huge gap in life will bring about as much pain as torture. Even rather than living like this, many people think it is better to bury with their own shelter in a grand manner. Oshihua obviously also understands what they think. I didn't go into details on the tickets. Soon, the words changed and the real heavyweight benefits were put on the table. In addition, the permissions of the contribution value obtained in this mission will be adjusted to the highest level. It can be transferred to each other privately or used to purchase all the resources in our official warehouse, including the latest developed finished radiation-resistant coatings and formulas. Chapter 67 The Detector Gap. Generally speaking, the resources officially released for rewards and all resources in the official warehouse are completely different concepts. Many times, the contribution value obtained by completing official tasks. The real good things that can be redeemed are either limited in quantity or simply not directly. This time the restrictions are opened. It is tantamount to increasing the value of the contribution value to an unprecedented level. In comparison, when Su Wu won the first place in the task of cleaning up the city, the purchasing power of the contribution value was far from comparable to this time. As a result, the huge benefits behind this also made the rich people in the conference room who achieved success and stood on the top floor of Zhonghe City. I couldn't help but show my heart-wrenching expression. And what makes them even more irresistible is that the official will also provide new radiation-resistant coatings with better performance. This is a situation that knows that you will face a terrifying radiation environment next. The importance is self-evident. If no one objected. Next, let's discuss the division of labor. Seeing that no one jumped out to raise objections, Oshihua nodded slightly. Go directly to the next issue. The entire Zhonghe city will be divided into 15,000 monitoring areas according to terrain, area, environment, etc. You can apply to be responsible for the corresponding monitoring area according to your shelter. And if you still have enough energy, you can apply to be responsible for other monitoring areas. There is no limit on the number, you can apply for as many as you apply. But once you apply, if you neglect your duties, the consequences will be very serious. I hope you can do what you can. When Oshihua said this, he asked the assistant to send the marked map and various details to everyone in the conference room. Suwu receives relevant electronic files and opens them to check them. I found that the official contribution value was quite generous. A monitoring area with a total of about 1,000 square meters requires only uploading the monitored radiation data every 10 minutes to obtain 1,000 contribution value. Even if you do nothing else, just take care of the monitoring area above your shelter. Over the course of a day, you can get more than 140,000 contributions. Of course, the job looks simple. Calculate the cost carefully, but the actual investment is also extremely amazing. According to official requirements, every upload and every square meter in the monitoring area must have an independent continuous detection data of no less than 30 seconds. This means a refuge for the mission. Either they are rich and powerful, and have the ability to invest thousands of radiation detectors and recorders in one monitoring area at the same time. Or there are sufficient human resources and enough personnel to guard the monitoring area in the field, and manually conduct inspections and records. General Refuge. Even like Wang Jiangguo, the director of the iron and steel factory, has more than 2,000 people, and before the end of the world, there were elites among the ordinary people with assets of hundreds of millions. Not to mention taking on additional tasks, even the most basic starting line, responsible for the monitoring area at the door of your own shelter, is difficult to complete. From this perspective, the official Zhonghe city only found the 30 or so people in the conference room, and at least the head of a large shelter with tens of thousands of people, for discussion. It's also a clear goal. Improve the efficiency of performing tasks to the highest level. In addition, the official also has a high standard for the accuracy of radiation detectors. At least, some cheap radiation detection equipment on the market before the end of the world was basically impossible to meet the requirements. At least professional equipment costs more than 5,000 yuan. And it has to be modified to adapt to the high-temperature environment on the surface today. 3D printers should be able to produce testing equipment that meets the requirements. It's just that the battery may be a bit large. Suwu slightly evaluated the difficulty of manufacturing and felt that the problem was not big. As for the battery, that's impossible. Batteries are much more difficult to manufacture than ordinary mechanical parts. At present, Suwu can produce some old-fashioned batteries with low capacity at most, and those with a little more advanced can only sigh. But anyway, it's fine. It's better to be bigger than nothing. And just when Suwu was considering production issues, Zhou Bin, the second-generation official, stepped forward and applied for the right to ask questions for the meeting. Can the official provide qualified radiation detectors? Many of us did not expect to encounter such extreme situations before the end of the world, and there was not much related equipment reserved. What's more, even if there are, the conditions are limited now, so it's very troublesome to modify. No mistakes, one song, one content, 1 in 6, one book, one bar, one reading. Of course, if we can provide it, we will also pay the corresponding purchase fee. The official will not suffer any loss. Zhou Bin's words aroused the approval of many people present. As the leaders of large refuges, they actually do not lack resources. But according to the news they received before the end of the world only appeared in two forms, extreme heat and extreme cold. At that time, even if you consider dealing with unexpected situations, you will make some extra preparations. However, it is impossible to tilt resources at will for no reason to a large amount of them on the detection radiation that is not planned. And this brings about an embarrassing situation. Now when they need to use a large number of radiation detection equipment, they can't produce that much. Even if you choose to use human monitoring. Each monitoring area must be equipped with at least dozens of detectors to meet the minimum needs. But even these dozens of detectors, it is not that easy to take out many large shelters. The official can provide a certain number of detectors, and then repay them with contribution points. But this number won't be too many. There is still a gap, and you need to find a way to produce it yourself. Speaking of this problem, Oshihua also had a headache. All of them were obtained from the Federal Academy of Sciences. These large private shelters were not expected or prepared, and as the official institution of Zhonghe City, it is naturally impossible to be much better. That is because the scale is large enough. The official shelter can barely piece together 2 production lines for production testing instruments that work overtime. But even so, it is difficult to meet the demand in a short period of time. We can only hope that all the capacity of private refuge can undertake part of the production tasks. Oshihua's words made many people in the conference room look bad. Making a radiation detector is not easy. Even if they still retain a certain production capacity in their shelter, it is basically impossible to produce these things. The whole meeting room was silent for a few minutes. At this time, Su Wu, who came back to his senses from his state of thinking, coughed lightly. It's time to have a say. Video conferencing on the home screen. The picture belonging to Su Wu began to enlarge and occupied the middle position. Everyone participating in the meeting immediately turned their eyes on him with different expressions. Chapter 68 The Newcomer in Zhonghe City. View from the enlarged home screen. Su Wu's face was as young as a student who had just entered university. It does not show the calmness, majesty and other characteristics of a qualified leader. But behind him, there were soft and bright lights, as if they were cast from metal. The integrated and simple and smooth silver hall brought him a slight sci-fi atmosphere from the future. It makes no one feel contemptuous. A spacious and bright hall that looks full of technological attributes is enough to reveal a lot of information. In an underground shelter where every inch of land is valuable, this is one of the symbols of strength. Control Center. Su Wu looked around the video conference and saw a narrower avatar frames. Although this is just a video conference, there are only more than 30 people sitting there. But considering that the power in their hands is enough to determine the fate of tens of millions of people, the feelings are still a little different after all. Take a light breath. General Su Wu calmed down and expressed it in the most straightforward and neat language. Our shelter can provide 5,000 radiation detectors a day. The price is about 2.5 times the official price. Support payments with contribution values, rare materials, and circuit boards and metal waste picked up from the city. The price he offered was much more expensive than the official one. But it's not a quarrel. At this moment, the radiation detector is an essential tool for official tasks. When the official sells it, it has some support and benefits, and the price cannot be higher than the cost price. Su Wu's sale is purely a commercial transaction. It is impossible to obtain other additional implicit returns from this transaction. Therefore, some business rules can naturally be used appropriately. For example, estimate the price according to the conditions of urgent demand and shortage of supply, and give a price of 2.5 times the official one. After making the speech, Su Wu retreated back to his original place. The location of the main screen was returned to Oshihua. But from the expressions of the attendees, it can be seen that many of them still kept their eyes on Su Wu, who had retreated back to the audience. This time, Su Wu seemed to have only said 3 sentences, and the content was just selling his own radiation detector. But the potential information revealed inside is really terrifying. Just like the national strength between countries, industrial strength occupies one of the most important parts. In the end of the world, between independent refuges. The criteria for measuring each other's strength depends on industrial productivity, in addition to the number of people and resources. On the day of getting the news, the production line was urgently modified and the production capacity of 5,000 radiation detectors per day exploded. And it also opens up the acquisition of electronic waste and scrap metal. What does this mean? Representing Suwu's refuge, a complete industrial manufacturing system including recycling and smelting has been established. As long as you give enough raw materials, you can produce most of the mechanical equipment and parts by yourself. Assessed from this aspect, the strength of Suwu's refuge can no longer be described as powerful, but rather terrible. With this industrial productivity, everyone present believes it. It is not very difficult to produce weapons that can destroy most of them refuges as long as Suwu is willing. The strong are always awesome. At this moment, Suwu established his position in Zhonghe City with his strong productivity. I'm glad that Mr. Suwu was able to come forward and solve a big problem for us. On behalf of millions of people in Zhonghe City, I would like to thank you for your contribution. As an official senior official, Oshihua didn't care about Suwu's industrial capabilities. Anyway, as long as Suwu can share some pressure for him, he will be a good citizen and a person worthy of encouragement. It can cover at least 80 or 90 detection areas if it saves some use. Besides, energy sources continue to produce later. Overall, it has been able to make up for a large part of the gap, making the official pressure no longer so much. While Oshihua breathed a sigh of relief, he couldn't help but take on a big bag. Don't worry about sales. I'm here to make the decision for everyone. As long as your radiation detector meets the standards, you can collect as much as you have. If you trade with contribution value, you don't have to wait for the future. We officially guarantee that you can pay the contribution value to you for those shelters. Paying the contribution value on the spot is a kind of support with considerable strength. With the arrival of a radiation storm, the transportation of supplies between shelters in the future will only become increasingly difficult. No mistakes, one song, one content, 1 in 6, one book, one bar, one reading. Many shelters with weak risk resistance may even lock their own doors to the outside world for a long time to avoid exposure to radiation. Now, taking advantage of the good environment, I will get the contribution value earlier and exchange materials from the official. Invisibly, Suwu can reduce a lot of trouble. After Suwu came on stage. There are also several large shelters in charge who have said they can undertake part of the radiation detector manufacturing tasks. The pricing is the same as Suwu. However, they basically do not collect junk from the ruins of the city, but only collect contribution values and rare materials. These large forces that had huge wealth before the end of the world basically have no shortage of the most basic metal raw materials. In their eyes, consuming huge amounts of energy to resmelve scrap metal is purely a loss-making deal. And with the participation of these large shelters, the problem of radiation detector gap has been basically solved. The meeting process also begins to enter the specific transaction allocation stage. After more than 10 minutes, Aoshua announced the end of the meeting and hurriedly stepped down. Suwu then left the video conference room. Then I soon discovered that there were multiple accounts from large shelters and began to send him private chat messages. I didn't rush to check it out. Suwu poured himself a glass of Coke with air conditioning and bubbles, and took a big sip. Let your mental state recover after recovering under the stimulation of cold carbonated drinks before continuing with the next step. The meeting ends. It does not mean that things have come to an end, but a busy beginning. Next, they have less than 48 hours of safety left. Suwu must complete as much negotiations and transactions with other large shelters as possible during this period, as well as material transportation issues. Afterwards, it will be much trouble to continue the same thing. Besides, at that time, we must also leave our main energy to fight disasters. The Federal Academy of Sciences is not an omniscient and omnipotent God. Their predictions may not be comprehensive or accurate. When a real disaster comes, no one can be sure of what kind of scenario it will be. All we can do is to leave as much emergency plans and materials as possible. Chapter 69 10,000 tons of materials. The price of radiation detector is 2,500 per unit. One is converted to 300 kilograms of scrap circuit board, or 5 tons of scrap metal. The transportation fee is half the cost, and you are responsible for the transportation, and the remuneration is 10% of the total value of the transport materials. A variety of metal raw materials, such as gold, silver, copper, lead, etc., as well as various other chemical raw materials and finished products, refer to the prices before the end of the world in general, and then float or lower according to current demand. Quote. You can provide modification services on your behalf, and the modification fee is tentatively 200 contribution per unit. You can pay with other equivalent materials. Population resources. No population is needed for the time being. Dealing with large shelters involves the transaction of huge amounts of materials. The process is much more complicated than imagined. The radiation detector itself is already valuable. The output of 5,000 units per day is more than 12 million contribution value, or more than 20,000 tons of scrap metal. If these materials are completely digested, Suwu can even build a 10,000-ton giant ship. Such a huge amount of supplies. How to carry out land transportation alone is a huge project involving countless manpower and material resources. What's more, with huge amounts of supplies coming together, there are corresponding security, storage and other work. Don't look at these large shelters who are quite gentle and friendly in negotiations, and act almost completely on the principles of mutual benefit and fairness. But as long as they find opportunities to take advantage of them, Suwu believes that they will not be stingy with exposing their cruel claws. Separate Suwu's refuge and eat. Fortunately, large shelters that use cheap materials such as scrap metal to pay are a minority after all. Most transaction objects choose more convenient contribution values or lightweight precious metals such as gold, silver, and copper to exchange them. This gave Suwu a chance to breathe, so that he would not be too busy. Of course, even if the transportation pressure of trading materials is greatly reduced, the entire transaction process is still quite cumbersome. In this situation of lack of clones, Suwu had no choice but to start letting artificial intelligence go online and use it to share some non-decision-making things. In this way, this huge transaction involving a contribution value of tens of millions can be continued successfully. The ruins of the farmyard. Second floor control center in the shelter. Suwu rubbed his forehead tiredly, feeling his head buzzing. After the price negotiation with the last large shelter and the method of transportation was determined, he finally had some rest time. Hundreds of materials, each one has to be priced separately. It's really troublesome. Also because of the huge transaction amount, many large shelters that are unwilling to use precious contribution values are actually just a little bit together to make up for the resources to buy radiation detectors. And in this kind of patchwork, it is naturally impossible to have only one or two materials. Most of them pack some unimportant or excessive materials and exchange them together. And, these different materials. Prices in the apocalyptic environment are also significantly different from those in the past peaceful times. Negotiate one by one. Suwu refused to be a little higher than his actual value. The team in charge of the negotiations on the large shelter is not willing to give in. After pulling and pulling, Suwu spent a lot of energy. This is also the most difficult part of the transaction. When the negotiations are over, artificial intelligence will participate in the subsequent process and help. It will be much easier, allowing Suwu to take the opportunity to get out. Some people actually propose to trade with population. Is this back to the slave society? Thinking of the negotiation leader of a large shelter, he secretly told Suwu that he hoped to use a group of gentle and beautiful young women, professional skills, and qualified experimental materials for health to deduct the purchase. Radiation detector payment. Suwu couldn't help but feel a little headache, and was a little shocked by the refreshed view. This is not just a month or two to move into the shelter. How can even trade populations so skillful and openly? Maybe there has always been population transactions. It's just that in the end of the world, it has become more unscrupulous. If you think about the performance of the person who was selling him, it is obvious that he is not a practitioner who temporarily changed careers after entering the end of the world. Suwu had a vague understanding. This person is most likely to have done similar activities before the end of the world. But then again, if you have the chance in the future, for gentle and beautiful young women, you may not be able to consider getting a batch back. No mistakes, one song, one content, 1 in 6, one book, one bar, one reading. Well, it's about making it, not buying it. The other party blatantly picked up the slave merchant vocation again. When it comes to them, of course, the benefits of eating black are higher. Otherwise, Suwu had made so many weapons, and it would be a waste to put them there as mascots. Rest for a while. Suwu began to adjust the production plan in the shelter. The initial plan to expand the size of the engineering team and the scavenging fleet was naturally terminated immediately. 2 gravel trucks and 2 ore-type transport trucks have been produced. The former still joins the engineering team and is responsible for continuing to expand the 5th floor of the underground space. Before leaving the factory, Suwu took it back to remodel. The open-air truck bucket originally used for loading was recapped and closed. Then weld a 20mm cannon that can rotate 360 degrees, and 2 8-mounted rocket launch nests. Give it an extremely fierce firepower and appearance. Without considering its weak body, it has almost no real armor and defense capabilities. This is a killing machine that can give people an extremely professional impression in appearance. There are these 2 ore-type modified armored vehicles patrolling near the shelter. Plus with the 120mm howitzer inside the small bunker, 4 unfolded folding shooting platforms. In addition, 10 construction robots were dispatched to arm a combat team. It should be enough to establish a certain deterrence. Forget it, just a little more insurance. Recall the scavenging convoy. Modify the 2 special transport vehicles in the convoy and install them on cannons and rocket launch nests. In addition to the 30mm rapid-fire gun on the roof of the large truck, 2 12.7mm heavy machine guns were added to both sides. The carriage is also modified. Add a drone lifting platform, stuff 2 K2 series agricultural drones into land drone carrier mode. It can be sent out when necessary and go to the city to perform bombing missions. That's the case. It should be enough for the time being. Even after doing this, Suwu still felt a little lacking in confidence. But time and productivity did not allow him to continue to be willful. Chapter 70 Delivery. It was only modified based on the idea that Suwu had already proposed. It takes several hours to complete the 2 engineering robots in the shelter and with the help of some of the productivity of CNC machine tools. If you continue to increase the burden, it will definitely affect a series of more important plans in the future. After a little bit of entanglement in my heart, Suwu could only sigh silently and gave up his plan to strengthen his military equipment again. Handle things inside the shelter. Suwu continued to devote himself to the seemingly endless trading work. 8 p.m. 1 hour and 15 minutes after the official video conference ends. A convoy of 5 small and medium-sized trucks, with dazzling high beams, arrived at the ruins of the farmhouse courtyard in the thick night. They brought the first batch, totaling dozens of tons of scrap metal. At the same time, there were also several technicians from large shelters on board. These technicians will be responsible for testing the performance of the radiation detector produced by Suwu shelter. Only after passing their acceptance can subsequent large-scale transactions be started. Of course, during the testing period, it will not affect the unloading of truck fleets, nor will it affect the continuous arrival of other transportation fleets in the future. Even the transaction of scrap metals only accounts for a small part of all transactions. Its total weight is also extremely amazing, reaching the level of 10,000 tons. Don't seize the time and make full use of all opportunities for transportation. It is very likely that the relevant transportation tasks may not be completely completed until the disaster breaks out. Artificial intelligence manipulates 2 fully armed construction robots and comes forward to negotiate with them. The first batch of 10 radiation detectors were delivered. These detectors are the first batch of products produced by CNC machine tools and 3D printers that received manufacturing tasks after the official video conference. From raw materials to becoming finished products, it takes less than 3 minutes to get off the production line. However, they are sold at a price of up to 25,000. The total value of dozens of tons of scrap metal transported by this fleet is higher. Suwu did not intervene in the reception affairs. At this time, he left the control center and went to the 5th floor underground in person. Final reinforcement is carried out for the warehouse that has just been temporarily rushed to work on the 5th floor. At present, the entire underground floor has been dug up by the engineering team to a space of more than 500 square meters. Except for part of the space necessary to occupy during construction of the engineering team. The rest of the room is also enough to build a medium-sized warehouse. In Su Wu's plan, this medium-sized warehouse will be used to store scrap metal traded from many large shelters this time. More than 3,000 cubic meters of space. It seems a little small. Standing in the warehouse that had just been reinforced with the survival point, Su Wu looked around. The area of 300 square meters and the height of 12 meters make the place look quite spacious. But only that, it is quite difficult to put down tens of thousands of tons of scrap metal. Those scrap metals are not smelted steel ingots. Their various strange shapes, in terms of conversion, occupy at least 3 or 5 times more space than steel ingots of the same quality. Build 2 more briquetting machines. Compress all the scrap metal and transport it into the warehouse. Time is limited, so the briquetting machine made by Su Wu naturally cannot be as perfect as professional equipment. According to his intention, find a few pieces of melted steel plates and weld them together, and then assemble them with motor pulleys, etc., as long as they can be used. This simple manufacturing task can be easily accomplished with a single engineering robot. It doesn't take too long. However, from the original unloading to the direct entry of the warehouse, an additional compression program is added. It is obvious that a lot of labor will be wasted and the time to enter the warehouse will be extended. But it is better to be slower than to have no place to put them on the ground and be able to get radiation. After the engineering team was suspended, 3 mini excavators and 2 mini carriers can also be released. Modify the boom of the micro excavator. Pick out 2 of them and are responsible for compressing the metal. The other one, together with the micro transporter, transports the compressed scrap metal to the warehouse on the 5th floor underground. After arranging this, Su Wu found that he had no suitable labor force to dispatch. The goods transported by the large shelter convoy still need to be responsible for unloading the goods. No mistakes, 1 song, 1 content, 1 in 6, 1 book, 1 bar, 1 reading. Then, if it really doesn't work, let those 2 special transport vehicles work part-time. They have booms anyway. After a headache for a while, Su Wu chose a compromise. The special transport vehicle that was originally intended to be converted into an armored vehicle was temporarily pulled over to the post. Of course, it is one thing to go on duty, and there will be no fewer weapons to be installed. These are valuable combat power. When necessary, we still need to pull onto the battlefield. Finally, there were several gravel trucks and cement mixers in the engineering team. These modifications are a little more powerful, and they are not impossible to use. The overly stressed labor force forced Su Wu to set his mind on professional vehicles that should not be used. I really have to worry about it. These vehicles can be used as transport vehicles even if they are simply treated as a front, with an iron plate hanging on the back, and 2 tires. And after plundering all the potential in the shelter as much as possible. Unloading, compressing and storing the entire system of receiving materials can finally be said to have been successfully established. At this point, there will be no more checkpoint restrictions on the handover of materials with the large shelter fleet. Ground. Several technicians from large shelters wearing thermal insulation suits finally came to the conclusion that they had qualified performance after more than half an hour of tedious testing of the radiation detector. This time, the second larger transport convoy has also arrived. The arrival of a total of more than a dozen large and medium-sized trucks made this area, except for small bunkers and shelter exit bunkers, leaving only the rocky desert, which became lively again after the storm. Peng Chengbing carefully drove the huge truck, following behind the convoy, heading towards the deserted suburbs. This was the first time he drove out of the urban area of Zhonghe City after moving into the refuge in the end of the world. And it is precisely because it is the first time I stay away from my own refuge. There was a little nervous in his heart. You know, before leaving. The team leader has emphasized to them many times that you must concentrate when you are in the wild and be careful. It is far away from shelter and lacks rescue facilities. Once something happens, life is likely to be in danger. Subscribe to Chinese Novel Audiobook YouTube channel. Chapter 71 Human Heart and Benefits. For the team leader. Peng Chengbing still believed it very much. As far as he knows, most of the population of the entire Zhonghe city is now gathered in shelters under the urban area. The number of people stranded in refuges in wilderness outside the city is less than 1/10 of the population left in rural areas before the end of the world. It is considered a compliment to describe it as a wide range of land and sparsely populated people. Taking advantage of the fact that the vehicle entered a stable section of the road, Peng Changbing secretly glanced out of the side window from the corner of his eye. What a little disappointed him was that he was covered by the thick night. It was pitch black in the distance and could hardly see anything. However, the air conditioner on the car made a light sound at this time, reducing the air conditioner that was spit out again. This makes the air in the entire cab become more dull, humid and hot. Don't make any malfunction. Peng Changbing's eyelids twitched when he heard this, and his heart was hanging. This air conditioner, modified by the shelter, is the most important life-saving tool in his car. Once a complete strike is made, the high temperature of 70 to 80 degrees outside will penetrate. I'm afraid he has to experience the life and death test mentioned by the leader on the spot. After all, he didn't have the thermal insulation clothes that the shelter managers could wear. Perhaps it was because I heard Peng Changbing's inner prayer. After a period of stuttering, the car air conditioner slowly returned to normal. Peng Changbing breathed a long sigh of relief. At this time, the light from the central control screen in the cab suddenly moved slightly. The original offline map was replaced by a 3D real-life map that changed in real time. Meanwhile, a soft female voice came from the speaker that came with the central control screen. You have entered the scope of the Wangxi village. Please follow the new driving route. Peng Changbing was not surprised, but a hint of peace and curiosity appeared on his face. According to the previous instructions of the team leader, this is a symbol of about to arrive at the destination. Next, he just followed the prompts with concentration. But this is not the point, he secretly took a look at the phone he brought with him. In the gossip, as long as you enter the range of Wangxi village, or rather, you enter the range of more than 10 kilometers near Wangxi village, you can connect to a new internet and download massive resources at will from there. You can even interact with people online to play games. I hope the legend is true. Peng Changbing muttered. A few minutes later, a place shining with lights appears at the end of the road. Peng Changbing followed the prompts and parked the car in an open space. Then the original 3D real-life map on the center console switched to countdown. Tell him that in 14 minutes and 37 seconds, relevant docking vehicles will come to unload the goods. It's quite thoughtful. Peng Changbing likes this feeling of order. He doesn't have to think about anything, and he doesn't have to do anything extra. Just wait quietly for arrangements to finish the work. At the same time, years of experience also made him understand that only in this kind of order can work efficiency reach the highest level. But unfortunately, very few people can do this in the end of the world. Even the large shelter where he is can't achieve this efficient working model. Because this requires a powerful artificial intelligence and a server with strong enough performance for AI to run. No matter which of these two things is a luxury for a small place in Zhonghe City. I looked out of the car curiously again. Under the illumination of a large number of high-power lights, Peng Changbing saw two armored vehicles that seemed to be loading machine guns and rocket launch nests, patrolling the periphery. Occasionally there are one or two robots walking with guns between vehicles to maintain order. It's really advanced. Peng Changbing sighed a little. He wasn't that surprised by the armored vehicles. It is quite normal for a large force that can cause such a big disturbance in the end of the world to have some professional military weapons. What he is strange about are the guard robots. This thing is not cheap. It is said that the various costs of a robot are enough for several workers to work for more than 10 years. Even before the end of the world, there were not many factory owners in Zhonghe City who were willing to buy robots for work. As for the aftermath of the end of the world, let alone. Robots are cheap and easy to use. For those senior shelter executives, the lives of 10 workers may not be as valuable as a robot. I felt a little satisfied with the curiosity in my heart. Peng Changbing immediately lowered his head and couldn't wait to unlock his phone. The result did not disappoint him. No mistakes, one song, one content, 1 in 6, one book, one bar, one reading. There is indeed a new network here. Can you really go online? With expectations. By clicking on the web page with your fingers, Peng Changbing plunged into the internet, which has become increasingly rich in content. At the same time, the news broke out with several large shelters. Destined to be huge enough to cover up. Even in many information-enclosed underground shelters, this has become the focus of discussion among many people. And after focusing on the eyes of almost the entire Zhonghe city, most capable people, some undercurrents inevitably come. And its explosion was so sudden and violent. It exploded suddenly like a thunder. Chaoyang Refuge. The assistant hurriedly knocked on the door and entered an elegantly decorated office, whispering the latest news to his boss. Are you ready to start? Fu Yongyuan raised his head, took the tablet from his assistant slowly, and clicked to view the video taken by the intelligence personnel on the surface. You can see it from that video. A group of modified vehicles are gathering on the edge of the city. From time to time, armed personnel wearing thermal insulation suits were walking through it. Judging from the appearance alone, these people do not seem to have much combat power. Some of them simply hold homemade earth guns, which look both funny and ridiculous. But it's enough to be terrifying if they're taken into account. More than 200 modified vehicles and more than 1,000 people have an armed scale. If this force is used well, it can pose a fatal threat to any large shelter. It is said that Jingyuan has intervened. Several retired officers were sent to assist. There are also Hongtu supporting a batch of standard ammunition, which may contain heavy weapons such as individual rockets and howitzers. The assistant whispered to the boss about the key points. A group of organized and unorganized armed personnel have completely different combat effectiveness. Having professional officers participate means that the upcoming battle is destined to be a small fight, but a real battle. It seems that our new friend is quite popular. Fu Yongyuan smiled, looking unanswerable. He lowered his head and watched the intelligence video for a while. He had a resolution in his mind. Let our Department of Security Field Forces prepare for it. If you have the opportunity, go and participate. The production capacity of 5,000 radiation detectors per day is earning tens of millions of contributions per day. Even with Fu Yongyuan's wealth, he couldn't help but feel moved. Although I am not going to be the first to be a good person, the idea of following the crowd is inevitable. Chapter 72 War Mode. The same time. Official Shelter No. 1, Zhonghe City. Shihua sat quietly at his desk working. In his daily life, he had both majestic and cold alienation. As the municipal minister who manages the entire Zhonghe City and all official shelters for external affairs, the third person in Zhonghe City. The huge power he held was enough to affect every aspect of millions of people. And his long-term high-level life also cultivated a special superior mentality. The position of the station is too high, no one can see that it is just a common person. Negligible. Bite. The confidential phone rang on the table. Aushua picked up and connected. Opposite is the head of the intelligence department. After listening to the report on the phone patiently for a while, Shihua asked a few more questions. Then he quickly gave instructions. People's affairs will be solved by the people themselves. But warn them, be careful about the scale. I don't care who will benefit in the end, but the production equipment cannot be damaged or affected the overall situation of fighting radiation disasters. This is the bottom line. Whoever violates it will pay double the price. Hang up the phone. Shihua continued to be buried in official duties. As for Su Wu, who is that? A nice guy, that's all. The breath of storm is coming. In the eyes of insiders, it is becoming more and more intense. But everyone kept silent in agreement. He just looked at the direction where the Wangshi village was with a gloating or inquiring gaze. This may be a feast of wealth, or it may be just a test for the upstart. The ruins of the farmyard. The second floor of the underground shelter. Su Wu knew nothing about the undercurrents in the upper class of Zhonghe City. As an emerging refuge developed by ordinary people, his connections in Zhonghe City are nearly zero. No one will inform him specifically. But this does not mean that he has no idea about the movements in the city. The monitoring network was previously laid out due to concerns about the purple skylight. It was easy to find the movement on the edge of the city. After analysis and judgment by artificial intelligence, a war report was sent to Su Wu's hands. An armed force of thousands of people. As the probability of invasion 87%. When Su Wu saw the data, he was still a little surprised. The current surface environment is not before the end of the world. The hot high temperature makes humans have to pay a huge price for every extra second of their movement outside. And in this case, people of this size can still be gathered. It's really not something that ordinary people have the ability to do. It's them. Just after a little thought, Suwu quickly locked in the envoy behind this group of armed forces. Needless to say, it must be the one from that large shelter chat group. And definitely more than one or two. Maybe even official forces are involved. After all, the official is not a whole, it is just a reflection of the gathering of multiple forces. If you are not sure, one of them will be interested in the production equipment of Suwu shelter. Just then, the artificial intelligence prompted him that someone sent him a message through the official satellite network. Suwu log into view. I found that Yi Luoxuanghua was looking for him. Be careful lately. Armed personnel from unknown forces gathered near the city. It may attack civilian shelters around. This is a message about the fallen leaves. So many people blatantly took out weapons, and the official did not care. This is a little different from what you said before. Suwu replied. No way. This time there were many people involved, including a senior official. The military is not easy to interfere. And our minister has once again issued a message on this matter, and everything should be focused on stability and the overall situation. The main problem now is to fight radiation storms, and everything else can be compromised. The leaves fall frost and flowers are a little bitter and disappointed in their words. Then she hesitated for a moment and said almost explicitly. No mistakes, one song, one content, 1 in 6, one book, one bar, one reading. It really doesn't work. You just come and find me. As long as you give up the shelter, no one will chase you and pester you. Suwu directly ignored the words behind Yi Luoxuanghua. Nodded thoughtfully. Thank you for the reminder. I'll feel relieved if you say this. From the perspective of stability and overall situation, everything else can be compromised. In other words, the potential meaning is that you can make things bigger with confidence. This is a license issued to the strong and allowed to act recklessly. Exit the network. Suwu buried his head and pondered for a while. Open the list of the shelter and pull it to the end. It was just used as a backup method. I didn't expect that it can really come in handy now. On the screen, two 240mm extended rockets. Standing quietly in the ammunition depot dedicated to the shelter. It is only a few meters away from the launch silo, which is the drone lifting platform. Artificial intelligence opens up a full-scale war mode. Target, annihilate the enemy. There are no too many words. Suwu fully delegated the authority of the war to artificial intelligence. As an ordinary person, he knows almost nothing about specific combat command. Instead of being able to command randomly by feeling at that time, it's better to transfer the command authority directly. Let artificial intelligence rely on data to carry out accurate firepower coverage. Authorization accepted. Closing square bracket. The reconnaissance drone marshalling begins to take off and performs reconnaissance missions. Closing square bracket. The ammunition depot begins pre-war maintenance. Closing square bracket. The large trucks of combat units began to replenish ammunition. Closing square bracket. Supply type is locked, K2 series special rocket for agricultural drones, airdrop type aluminum thermal incendiary bomb, 30mm armor-piercing bomb, 30mm incendiary bomb, 12.7mm machine gun bullet, folding shooting platform. Closing square bracket. A line of text appears silently on the console screen. The war system created by Suwu's refuge. It started to operate officially for the first time. Boxes of ammunition, and one cold weapon after another. Sent into combat vehicles. Then, with the vehicles, they silently drove out of the shelter and disappeared into the night towards the city. The 7th minute after the AI initiated the war program. The reconnaissance drone marshalling sent back a large amount of enemy intelligence. A total of 217 modified vehicles of different models were marked as targets to be eliminated. At the same time, starting with the modified vehicle at the most central location, all terrain data within a radius of 1.5 kilometers. All were integrated. Form a real-time tactical map. 15th minute. The combat unit large trucks have arrived at the battlefield. Closing square bracket. Start deploying sub-combat unit folding shooting platform. Closing square bracket. No combat units were detected by the enemy. Closing square bracket. This deployment enables silent mode. Closing square bracket. Chapter 73. Brightening the fire in the night sky. Suwu refuge is 17.5 kilometers away in a straight line. Under the cover of darkness. A large electric truck was parked silently on the side of the road. Then its carriage was opened. A miniature transport vehicle slowly drove out of the carriage and disappeared into the wilderness in the distance. And as the mini transporter is away, on a temporary tactical map drawn by artificial intelligence, green spots of light began to appear along the edge of the battlefield. Every light spot represents that a folding shooting platform has been successfully deployed and connected to the command network of artificial intelligence. You can enter the battle anytime. 20 minutes. All pre-war preparations are completed. Su Wu's refuge. Two 240mm rockets were slowly transferred to the launch position after inspection and confirmed that they were in good condition through the laid fixed orbit. Then above the silo, the closed metal gates slid silently one by one. Coordinate calibration is successful. Closing square bracket. The rocket engine starts ignition and starts. Closing square bracket. On the tactical map, most of the area began to be shrouded in light red light. That is the preset rocket strike range. Unlike ordinary rockets, the 240mm rocket is equipped with aluminum thermal agent as the main warhead in Su Wu shelter. Perhaps the simple lethality is not strong enough. But the coverage is definitely broad enough. Blazing flames ejected from the bottom of the rocket. Then the huge rocket body completed the entire acceleration process in a short period of 1 or 2 seconds. Leaving out of the silo, he rushed into the sky at high speed. 10 seconds later, the second 240mm rocket continued to rise along the originally fixed orbit. Under the dark sky, the two rockets carried huge kinetic energy, passing by like a meteor. And in the few seconds they flew, the entire Earth immersed in the darkness was briefly illuminated. All those who stay near the surface of Huangshi village can see the burning traces left by them just by looking up. 17 kilometers away. Boom. No war was declared, no warning. Just as a group of people gathered on the edge of the city, still planning an offensive route, and proudly imagined the better life after the successful robbery. 2 low explosions. One after another exploded in the air. Then the next moment, countless brilliant and gorgeous fire lights, like silver willow branches hanging upside down, slowly exploring to the ground after spreading half of the sky. The light is so beautiful and gorgeous. Even the biggest meteor shower recorded in the past is not as brilliant and dazzling as this scene at this moment. But on the ground, everyone who heard the sudden explosion and looked up at this scene. But I can't feel the romance and beauty represented by the brilliant star rain at all. They can only see the approaching god of death. An endless fear and a sense of nearly desperate suffocation emerged from the heart. There is an attack. After being stunned for half a second, someone finally reacted. They overcome their fear. He tried his best to start the vehicle as fast as possible, trying to rush out of this place that was about to become a burning hell. But the vehicle located at the edge is fine. Those modified vehicles located in the center of the explosion are too dense. The faster you run, the more tragic the collision you will be in the chaos. In the end, there were even only 2 or 3 lucky ones. Only then did I successfully increase my speed. And at this time, the brilliant white fire in the sky has spread to the ground. It slowly goes by, but it is like a gangrene attached to the bone. Chasing behind every vehicle present. Run. A young man in a thermal insulation suit stepped on the accelerator under his feet to the maximum. He ran straight away, a jeep blocking the road, and rushed straight towards the hills in the distance. The shrill screams came from time to time behind him, and the occasional fire that exploded from the fuel tank. It all stimulated his nerves. He asked, his hands holding the steering wheel, and unconsciously the veins bulged due to excessive force. No mistakes, 1 song, 1 content, 1 in 6, 1 book, 1 bar, 1 reading. After a few seconds, he was lucky enough to break out of the range of the aluminum thermal incendiary bomb. But what greeted him was not the hope of escaping from the sky, but another oncoming fire. Boom. The whole car driven by the young man instantly turned into a burning flame with a violent explosion. Then, relying on inertia, he plunged head toward the hill next to him. The first wave of strikes was completed. Closing square bracket. The K2 series agricultural drones have begun to take off. Closing square bracket. The target of the strike was detected and hit the edge of the battlefield was detected. Closing square bracket. The folding shooting platform begins to enter the state of in-fight. Closing square bracket. On the tactical map, The red light spots marked as enemies were gradually reduced by about half under the cover of two 240mm rockets. The remaining red light spots dissipated towards the surrounding mountains and fields like fish that were blown up. Faced with this situation, artificial intelligence automatically turned on the second wave of strikes. The 2K2 series agricultural drones, each carrying 5 8.5 kilogram individual rockets, took off from the large truck compartment. The front face was facing the armed vehicles flowing over from the air. Soon, more than a dozen armed vehicles appeared within the detection range of the drone. 2K2 series agricultural drones were locked in an instant. In just 7 seconds, all the rockets carried were poured out. The firelight turned into 10 rockets accurately hit several armed vehicles in the front. Let it form a city wall made of flames in a continuous explosion. Block all subsequent vehicles. And at the same time, vehicles fleeing to other directions also began to be intercepted by folding shooting platforms. A large number of gunfires of automatic rifles resounded throughout the battlefield. Countless bullets woven into a net of death, killing all the lives that tried to break through the blockade. On the entire battlefield, this unilateral massacre lasted for about 5 or 6 minutes. It was not until the combustion area created by the 240mm rocket was gradually extinguished that the remaining armed personnel no longer rushed forward blindly. They were under the command of the surviving retired officers. Baron organized. With the help of the few remaining howitzers and mortars, and sporadic individual rockets launched a counterattack. Several folding shooting platforms fixed in place were destroyed under the counterattack of this heavy firepower. But that's all their record. This time, return to the large truck compartment to replenish ammunition. Enter the battlefield again. 10 extremely accurate rockets instantly destroyed several modified vehicles that were obviously in the leadership position in the car group. The morale of this armed force that was pieced together was completely broken. So far, the entire battle began to enter the late stage. The form on the battlefield changed from confrontation to pursuit and clearance. Chapter 74 Efficient Artificial Intelligence. K2 series agricultural drones begin to return. Closing square bracket. Supplementary aluminum thermal incendiary bomb. Closing square bracket. The 30mm rapid-fire cannon of a large truck starts to shoot. Closing square bracket. The remaining number of enemy targets is monitored to be less than 20%. Closing square bracket. Reconnaissance drone starts search mode. Closing square bracket. The large truck hidden in the night, the muzzle of the roof began to rotate silently. On average, it will be launched every 10 seconds. This is not the limit of the rate of fire of a 30mm rapid-fire gun, but it is the limit of the number of enemies within the range. With the help of reconnaissance drones' vision and precision analysis of artificial intelligence, the rapid-fire cannons on large trucks have extremely amazing hits. No matter what the opposite is coming to the modified vehicle or the armed personnel who have lost their vehicles. Almost all of them can be hit in one blow, and they can be destroyed or killed directly. In just 1 or 2 minutes, more than 7 or 8 modified vehicles fleeing to the direction of large trucks turned into wreckage on the roadside. In the air, the rocket launch nest was removed and 2K2 series agricultural drones were carried with aluminum thermal incendiary bombs. It hovered slowly at an altitude of about 200 meters. The maximum flight speed of 3 meters per second makes these two aircraft seem clumsy in the drone type, and they can hardly keep up with the speed of ground vehicles. But they don't have to race against cars on the ground. The complex and rugged hills on the ground have become their best helper. At this moment, they only need to drop in incendiary bombs at a few key nodes to easily lock the enemy's escape route. Then you can calmly compress the target's activity space step by step, until they are burned through. In this way, with the joint efforts of large trucks and K2 series agricultural drones, the air-to-ground attack, the surviving armed personnel began a difficult escape. After each round of attacks, the part of them who runs slowly or who is not hiding enough will fall under the attack of incendiary bombs or armor-piercing bombs. Leave other lucky ones behind and continue with the next round of survival challenges. Unconsciously, when the ammunition reserves in large trucks dropped to 1/3 of the original ones, the last dozen modified cars left. He had already fled for more than 10 kilometers. Whether it is intentional or unintentional, the direction of these vehicles moving forward is exactly where Wangshi village is located. The artificial intelligence responsible for commanding the war did not care about the intention behind these marked target behaviors. With the purest computing and logic, it chooses a more efficient model. Come and give them the last blow. The ruins of the farmyard. Two Or-type armored vehicles responsible for patrolling outside the material storage area suddenly stopped in place. They rotate the two 8-mounted rocket launch nests on their respective vehicles. Point it to the direction of Zhonghe City's urban area. Then after half a second of fine adjustment, all the rockets in the launch nest will be launched. A total of 32 rockets rose up in the air with bright flames swaying. A series of obvious arc trajectories were drawn in the air and fell to the earth 1 or 2 kilometers away. Then, continuous explosions formed obvious vibrations at the fallen place and were transmitted back from a distance. This allows the transport convoy that is resting or preparing to enter and exit to clearly feel the slight earthquake-like tremor. More than 100 drivers and workers from different shelters are still stranded here. Faced with this sudden accident, almost I couldn't help but feel a sensation and a slight uneasiness. The hot outside environment was already as harsh as hell. Now it seems that there is still war. Even rockets, such as rockets, which only exist in legends and stories on weekdays, can be dragged out and made appearances. No one knows what step will continue to develop in the future. Will they be implicated? But fortunately, every center console connected to Suwu's shelter artificial intelligence. The current work progress is still showing normally. Guide them to follow the steps. And having command and order means that the situation has not yet gotten out of control and they should be safe for the time being. It's really dangerous outside. No mistakes, one song, one content, 1 in 6, one book, one bar, one reading. I hope I can come home safely. In the cab of a large truck, Peng Changbing uploaded the video of two Or-type armored vehicles launching rockets on the newly registered video website. Watching the launch scene of this heavy weapon up close can certainly make people feel thrilling. But as long as he thinks about the killing and death represented by them, he, as an ordinary person, could not be excited. Civilians who have no ability to resist are involved in military armed disputes among these large forces. If you are not lucky, you will end up lying in the body. The only thing he can do is to hide further. Try not to get involved. Far away. The armored vehicle that was launched began to return to the shelter to replenish ammunition. At the same time, two special transport vehicles are in charge of loading and unloading goods. One of them suspended his original work and brought two fully armed construction robots, heading to where the explosion was. After a moment, it appeared at the explosion site. More than a dozen modified vehicles that had turned into wreckage but were still burning were towed to the roadside in turn. Let this only road leading from Zhonghe City to Wangxi Village be restored to smooth traffic. All hostile targets have been eliminated. Closing square bracket. The combat unit begins to return. Closing square bracket. Exit war mode. Closing square bracket. Second floor control center in the shelter. Along with the last few lines of operation log emerged. This battle lasted for more than half an hour, but killed thousands of people and was completely over. The ammunition inventory in Suwu's shelter was almost emptied by at least half. As the Dinghai Shen needle, there is not a single 240mm rocket left. Artificial intelligence is really useful. It's just that the ammunition is consumed so much. After checking his own inventory, Suwu sighed with some distress. He watched the whole process and saw many times that artificial intelligence still performs saturated strikes without need. Although this approach seems refreshing, it can also ensure the effective annihilation of the enemy. But the logistics are somewhat unbearable. If the battle lasts a little longer, you may have to face the embarrassing situation where there is no ammunition to use. But then he thought about it and Suwu saw it away again. Just waste it. At the very least, this combat method can have the greatest deterrent effect. I think he will usher in a long period of peace next. You can also enjoy many invisible bonuses brought by victory in this battle. Chapter 75 Official Attitude. As for the problem of insufficient ammunition inventory for the time being, Suwu was not worried much. When he planned to produce 5,000 radiation detectors per day, he actually reserved a small part of the productivity of CNC machine tools and 3D printers. Plus 2 engineering robots are assisting. Recovering is quite fast. It only takes about 2 hours. You can replenish all the conventional rockets consumed this time, as well as the bullets of automatic rifles, etc. Then in about an hour, a 240mm rocket can be created. Zhonghe City Urban District. Official Shelter No. 1. Oshihua hurried to the conference room. There were not many people present in the entire conference room, but they were all high-powered figures in the middle of the shelter. From the military to other departments, basically no one has left behind. Even Bai Ruian, the director of the official shelter who often sees the head but does not see the tail, rarely attends in person at this time. Since the person has arrived almost, let's start now. Secretary Wei, please play the information. Bai Ruian nodded to Oshihua and signaled the beginning of the meeting. A middle-aged man dressed up stood up and turned on the projector in the conference room. Start playing a battle video. Judging from the environment near that video, it was the battle that happened not long ago on the edge of the city. Everyone, this was 15 minutes ago. The incident happened at the edge of the North Bay area. The two sides participating in the war are one of the refugees in Wangshi village, and the other is a 1,000-person armed team jointly funded by multiple corporate shelters. Secretary Wei briefly introduced the background of the video. The video footage was then fixed at the moment of two 240mm rockets exploded in the air. In this battle, it is a refuge in the waste stone village that attacks the side. It showed a lot of force beyond the civil standards. For example, these two 240mm long-range rockets have their flight speed and explosion coverage, both reaching the active equipment level of the military's second-line troops. And other than that, Secretary Wei switched the video footage on the projector to the scene where the K2 series agricultural drones fired rockets, large trucks used rapid-fire guns to intercept them, and two OR-type armored vehicles, and long-range volleys fired rockets. They put a wide variety of weapons into combat in this battle. The average hit rate also reached an astonishing 90%. Basically, as the other side's armed team on the opposite side. It was quickly annihilated without organizing any effective counterattack. The military staff calculated. This refuge has at least a professional military command team, or world-class artificial intelligence. And summarize based on multi-party information. They also have a certain self-developed capability and a small industrial production system that has its own cycle. They can start with the basic smelting metal and produce most of the conventional weapons themselves. Performance is expected to be close to 70% of Sanctuary 9. As an official shelter that ruled millions of people, the intelligence capabilities it possesses are extremely terrifying. Once you get serious, the secrets of any shelter are almost impossible to hide before them. Now, Suwu Sanctuary, which is put in the spotlight to study. Their military level, technological level, and industrial productivity level are clearly analyzed. Quote. To sum up, we think. This suburban shelter, which was not previously registered, has quite strong comprehensive strength and survivability. It has all the conditions to become a truly armed force. After finishing the summary statement, Secretary Wei bowed slightly and retreated to the side and gave up his position as the host. True armed forces. The description seems ordinary, but in fact it is a very high evaluation. No matter how large the population or how rich the resources are, ordinary private shelters are, in the eyes of official shelter, they are just a rich commercial organization. The threat is nearly zero. If the complex connections are not considered, the official does not need to have any concerns if he wants to take action against them. In terms of status, it is probably equivalent to the flock of sheep in his own pasture. But the armed forces are different. It was a quasi-military organization with complete combat departments and logistical support, and extremely powerful combat power. If you really fight, it is likely to bring unpredictable losses. The benefits of destroying it may not necessarily cover the cost of military dispatch. It's purely a loss-making deal. In the conference room. No mistakes, one song, one content, 1 in 6, one book, one bar, one reading. With Secretary Wei's explanation ending. Many senior officials in the shelter silently read the information distributed at hand. For this emerging force that suddenly emerged and was full of force. They need to seriously consider what attitude their departments should take to deal with things related to them in the future. Bai Ruian looked at the silent atmosphere in the conference room. He coughed lightly and made a speech. I'll say a few words. This is the first real armed force that has emerged in our Zhonghe city. But elsewhere, other continents, this kind of thing is not uncommon. There is already a mature solution. I think we can copy it. In addition, I need to emphasize one thing. The current situation is to fight against natural disasters. We need to be responsible for the millions of people inside our shelter. As for the shelter, it needs to be considered as appropriate. After all, the resources we have are not endless and we cannot take into account too much. Now, everyone can talk about your opinion. The meeting didn't last long. With Berrien already setting the tone, the scope of suggestions that others can make is already quite limited. Overall, without planning to make a big move for the time being, the official sanctuary for Suwu will be regarded as an organization that can cooperate partially equally, rather than an ordinary businessman under his rule. In certain matters, the other party can be allowed to have a certain choice, instead of making decisions for him directly. Aoshua watched the temporary meeting coldly and spoke rarely. Until the meeting ended, he walked out of the conference room with everyone and looked at the decorative green potted plants on both sides of the aisle. After a little dazed expression, he sighed. He knew that little brother who hadn't been cared about by him a few hours ago. From this moment on, it will become an existence that cannot be ignored in Zhonghe City. For the first time, this powerful figure. I discovered that this world in the end of the world was already a little different from his past understanding. Subscribe to Chinese Novel Audiobook YouTube channel. Chapter 76 Shock and Notice. Chaoyang Refuge. Fu Yongyuan looked at the statistical report in his hand and was silent for a full minute. After a long time, I looked back with a complicated expression. You think, why is that Suwu so powerful? A total of more than 1,000 armed teams can almost reach half of the regiment's troops. But in the end, they were all beaten away in the blink of an eye. The assistant silently accompanied his boss while silently, without interrupting. He knew that the boss was just feeling too excited for a while and couldn't help but mutter to himself. What you need is to vent your emotions, not to really ask someone to talk to you. As the helm of a large group, Fu Yongyuan has always lived a comfortable and luxurious life. Even after entering the end of the world. Apart from not being able to play golf on real lawns, the quality of life has not been greatly affected. Even because of the self-built shelter, power has been further improved. The ability to equip the security department that used to have only had to hold a baton to equip it with a variety of new weapons. Even the number of security guards has expanded several times, rushing towards the scale of a truly established army. But stripped away the halo of wealth and status that enveloped him. Behind all this glory, he is still just a businessman in essence. Perhaps he is very skilled in assassination and fighting, and exchange of interests between the upper-class powerful people. But the understanding of real war only exists on paper. No one can know. When he saw the 240mm rocket detonated in the air in the video, it splashed the unimaginable high-temperature flames on nearly 1,000 meters of the ground. The so-called connections, the so-called security department with strong troops. In the face of this purest and most extreme violence, it is as ridiculous as a child playing house. After a deep loss, Fu Yongyuan closed his eyes and thought for a while, and made a decision. Let the security department withdraw people. There are also to send congratulations to Suwu for me, and then send someone to send a few lambs from the farm. We need to have a good relationship with him. Jingyuan Sanctuary, Director's Office. A bunch of waste. I can't even do a good job of alert. The enemy hit the door and realized that I was going to run away. Run, can you run away? Yan Qingyu slapped the desk with a bang. My eyes were slightly red because of their rapid breathing. He was already a little angry. And under the hideous appearance of the end of the road, there is an unconcealed guilt and panic. Before that, he also knew that it was very difficult to build a shelter with strong industrial manufacturing capabilities. However, the huge profits of the daily income of tens of millions of dollars blinded his heart. In addition, Suwu's reputation as a refuge was not prominent before, and he had no relatives or partners in Zhonghe City. Suwu himself is young and looks like he is bullied. He simply made up his mind and suppressed most of the armed forces in the shelter. We also contacted several other interested large shelters to jointly contribute. But who knows? Just now, the people have just gathered together, and the command system has not been established well. The door was already opened there. And he started to take heavy moves and even used heavy rockets with a coverage area of over 1,000 meters. The unprepared coalition forces were beaten to a half-disabled on the spot. Incompetent got angry for a while. Yan Qingyu raised his head and looked at the man sitting aside. The other party is a partner who has founded the company with him. After the end of the world, because the family members moved into the shelter together, the relationship became closer. Xiaopeng, do you think we can build that heavy rocket too? The man thought for a moment when he heard this. Shake his head. It should not be too difficult to create the body alone. The hardest thing is hit rate. There is a lot of technical support behind that. Even if we barely create it, it's just a big firework and can't beat the enemy at all. Yang Xiaopeng actually doesn't understand this very much. No mistakes, one song, one content, 1 in 6, one book, one bar, one reading. As a birth and most of his life experience, he was in a peaceful era. This heavy rocket that once appeared in the news only during military parades and exercises, was too far away from him. Even now in the end of the world, the official control has been much relaxed. Our own shelter also has a certain industrial foundation. He had never thought about trying to make such an exaggerated weapon before. But it doesn't matter if you don't know. He just needs to know that apart from Suwu's refuge, there is no other large private refuge, and it is enough to create that kind of rocket. If no one has it, it means that this thing is not something they can play with. Besides, there is actually no need to create it. With his head down, Yang Xiaopeng's eyes flashed slightly, and some other thoughts arose. Only Yan Qingyu was the only one who advocated targeting Suwu's shelter. He will also have all the benefits after success. So now there is a problem, why can't Yan Qingyu be responsible for it yourself? This is much safer and more realistic than continuing to fight Suwu's shelter on the battlefield with real swords and guns. Once the thought of betrayal arises, just like weeds, it can no longer be suppressed. Yang Xiaopeng continued to listen to the various unreliable ideas raised by the other side absent-mindedly. Start thinking secretly. What kind of gift should be taken as a stepping stone to talk to Suwu's shelter? The ruins of the farmyard. The impact of the battle on the edge of the city has begun to gradually be reflected at this time. In just over half an hour. In the chat group of more than 30 people in the official satellite network, more than a dozen private chat messages have been sent. Among them are greetings and showing kindness. Many of the heads of large shelters who were not involved in this incident simply exposed the forces involved in the 1,000-person armed team to Suwu. Armed with a large number of thousands of troops on the ground. The noise that caused the news was not only earth-shaking, but also not much smaller. For those large refuges that are deeply rooted in Zhonghe City, it is not difficult to find out the messenger behind them. And this can also be used as a gift to show kindness to Suwu. A powerful neighbor appeared around him, but he could not be physically eliminated. The best way to do it is to have a good relationship with him. Even if you can't get any benefits, it can at least reduce the probability that your neighbor will come to make your own decisions. And if this is normal. The senior shelter who sent him a private message through the official public chat channel was suspected to be a senior shelter who wanted to inform him. It seems particularly special and also makes Suwu interested. Chapter 77 Solid-State Battery Design Drawing. The first hour after the war. Through a remotely controlled construction robot, Suwu received 2 connectors who were riding in trucks transporting supplies and came in a low-key manner. I heard that Mr. Suwu needs a large number of high-performance chips here. The boss specially asked us to bring 120 A3 level smart chips as a gift for compensation. The connector is quite humble. I have no problem with respect. In the apocalypse, the global industrial system is almost stagnant. Due to the high requirements for manufacturing equipment, materials and environment. It can be regarded as an A3 level smart chip integrating the world's cutting-edge technology, almost one less is used. In addition, it has a very wide range of applications. It can not only be used on various large smart devices, but also with it as the core to create a powerful personal computer or server. The intersection of various factors has led to its price always being high in the end of the world. It has almost become the most valuable small category in industrial products. Even a few months before the end of the world, it was listed as a strategic resource by the authorities in advance. Selling is prohibited. This time, the other party can take out 120 A3 level smart chips. Not to mention as compensation, even if the request is a little too much, Suwu cannot consider it. Is this a peace call for peace on behalf of your refuge? Suwu asked with great interest. His voice was played through the speakers on the construction robot, which seemed a little distorted. It makes people unable to hear his true attitude. Don't dare. My boss just wants an opportunity to explain. This operation is all the result of our shelter director, and Yan Qingyu's unremitting actions. Others don't agree with his risky behavior. The connector denied it. Then they told them all about their purpose. Suwu listened patiently and asked once or twice. There is no complicated situation behind this. It was nothing more than a 25-year-old who wanted to get on the right, and took the opportunity to come over and surrender to him. Of course, there is also the fear of being implicated. Suwu just used a battle to create a bad reputation for thousands of lives. But it's not just a name. He can really put pressure and fear on the enemy. This can be revealed. You can also give him some support when necessary. After thinking for a while, Suwu gave the answer. Force is a means, not an end. Since the revenge can also be achieved, Suwu does not mind doing it in a more relaxed way. However, revenge is one thing, and the benefits you should get must be obtained. In addition, this batch of chips is not enough as compensation. After things are done, well, don't you still have a lot of copper ingots in stock? Take 200 or 300 tons to me then. 200 or 300 tons of copper ingots are worth tens of millions even before the end of the world. This asking price has exceeded the normal range and has an extremely obvious punitive nature. Suwu had no habit of tolerating the enemy. The shelter behind the group of people who had been planning to attack him in the hydroponic farm was secretly found by him through rewards during this period. Just waited for the help from behind to free up, and went to the door to take revenge. Now this invasion with a more harsh nature is naturally even more impossible to let go of it. Also as a member of the hostile camp. Urwuzai wanted to escape the liquidation by just offering sacrifices to his own boss, which was just overthinking. He sent off the joiner who seemed a little worried. Suwu leaned against the soft chair behind him, looked at the console screen, and under the command of artificial intelligence, the unloading square was orderly. He was stunned for a while, and suddenly sighed silently. Natural disasters outside are raging. The upcoming radiation storm will obviously push the human living conditions to a worse level. But humans hiding in underground shelters. But he still never forgets to fight for power and profit, completely ignoring the upcoming disaster. Human nature. Greetings from the heads of multiple large shelter are just the beginning. With the passage of time, more trucks loaded with supplies began to drive to the ruins of the farmyard in groups. No mistakes, one song, one content, 1 in 6, one book, one bar, one reading. This has gradually become a large-scale material distribution center. Although these materials transported are still mostly scrap metal and some raw materials. But the specific types and proportions that make them are no longer decided by the large refugees on the other side of the transaction. But after soliciting Suwu's opinions, he tried to transport the corresponding items as much as possible according to his needs for different types of materials. The subtle difference between this. The result is that the overall strength of Suwu's shelter will usher in a period of rapid development. Just wait until the production capacity is freed and this batch of materials is truly digested. General Suwu will no longer be afraid of any challenges from civil shelters. Even when facing an official shelter, you are qualified to really go up and touch it. Maybe the level of refuge in the system can also be used to take advantage of this huge change in strength. Upgrade to another level. And other than that, outside normal radiation detector related transactions. Suwu also obtained a lot of precious items from the extra gifts given by those large shelters. It includes several good quality lamps, a batch of special alloys that can be used in aerospace, design drawings for the first generation express-grade drones, etc. What surprised him the most was the design drawing of a solid-state battery. Although that drawing is just like the design drawing of the first generation of express-grade drone, it is 2 to 3 generations behind the most advanced technology. But having and not having are two concepts. With the design drawings of solid-state batteries, Suwu solved one of the last two levels of mass-produced robots and smart vehicles. Only the most core chip is left, which cannot be solved for the time being. At the same time, the chip gap can be solved partly through trade. The overall manufacturing difficulty is more than half lower than before. A larger scale expansion can begin. Import solid-state battery drawings and first-generation express-grade drone drawings into the artificial intelligence database. Suwu was so excited that he wanted to do something big immediately. But CNC machine tools and 3D printers running at full capacity, as well as engineering robots that are busy repairing weapons, manufacturing ammunition, and are almost out of business. All of them made him unable to truly express his excitement. After calming down, he could only give up his thoughts on childbirth for the time being. Focus on modifying the drawings. While there is still time, make the drawings first. Make solid-state batteries and drones more suitable for today's apocalyptic environment. Then wait until the production equipment has spare time in the future, then consider the issue of trial production. That's the reality. No matter how anxious you are, development needs to follow a fixed process step by step. Chapter 78 Radiation-Proof Coating. July 15. 24 hours after the end of the meeting that announced the upcoming radiating storm. As the second batch of 5,000 radiation detectors began to be delivered one after another. Wangshi village has truly become the busiest area in the entire Zhonghe city. Every moment, there are a large number of vehicles coming in and out here. Among them are trucks for transporting materials, engineering vehicles that help unload and carry out preliminary packaging, and off-road vehicles driven by different large shelters, specializing in command of fleets and managers responsible for handing over materials. And when there are too many people, it will naturally bring the breath of fireworks. Even due to temperature problems, most people are curled up in the cab. Only a small number of people walked out of the car wearing thermal insulation suits. But it also created a crowded scene. In this case, the road near the ruins of the farmyard site may even be in traffic jams occasionally. There are dozens or hundreds of cars in a long queue. This adds a different color to the wilderness that was almost extinct. Many workers who were hired to drive and unload goods couldn't help but look at this scene and look at it. This is a common scene before the end of the world and even annoys the people you meet. Now it looks extremely nostalgic. At the same time, on the ground, due to the need for a large amount of transportation materials, a brief prosperity began to occur. Many are located in the deep underground shelters. Countless refuge residents are still living a dull and boring life as they used to be. Work hard to earn a meager ration to survive. They lack the channels for understanding external information, not only know nothing about the prosperity on the ground at this time. There is no awareness of the upcoming radiation storm. In their eyes, the ever-dirty space inside the shelter may continue to remain unchanged for several years. Until the disaster on the ground passes and you can return to your former homeland. Apart from that, everything outside has nothing to do with them. But the residents of the shelter at the bottom were in a daze. The middle and senior elites in the shelter who have more information cannot be as comfortable as they do. Many of them never had a good rest after learning that the radiation storm was about to sweep the ground. I kept my eyes red and my spirits, and used the last safe time before this radiation to try my best to seek more disaster relief supplies, and to give up all preparations for escape if I had no choice. Radiation-resistant coatings, carbon fiber composite materials, protective clothing, lead plates, tin foil, and even high-density concrete, activated carbon, etc., everything that can be related to radiation resistance. In the eyes of these shelter elites, they have become the most valuable trading items. They are willing to pay a huge price to seek the self-defense. Even if you cannot protect the entire refuge, you must at least ensure that you and your family can be protected. Compared with these small and medium-sized refuges that strive to survive and save themselves. Large refuges that have barely been able to establish a complete ecological circulation system, but are seeking more benefits in the midst of their busy schedules. They received the mission to garrison the surface detection area from the official shelter. Get enough radiation detectors to complete tasks by opening inventory, producing them by themselves, or trading from official and other private forces, etc. Then, temporary or semi-permanent observation points are established in the corresponding detection area. Then, they summoned the residents of their own shelter. Select qualified workers from them for short-term emergency safety training. To be used to dispatch to the ground for monitoring tasks after the radiation storm comes. Because the shelter paid these workers quite generously, almost equaling more than 3 times their past income. Basically every selected worker was very happy and even had some expectations. For them, when protective clothing is provided by the shelter, there is no problem with their own safety. Going to the ground to work is equivalent to public tourism and adventure. It's much more fun than staying in a dull and small refuge all the time. But these people don't know. A protective clothing that can truly completely shield radiation is actually worth much more than they imagined. The shelter is distributed to them, even the various protective clothing they have known in the past, and has been exposed to. There may be some slight resistance to radiation, but more of it is just psychological comfort, and in fact there is no difference between not wearing it. Wait for them. It will be a horrible experience that seems relaxed but will pull them into ****** in the near future. No mistakes, 1 song, 1 content, 1 in 6, 1 book, 1 bar, 1 reading. At the same time, the ruins of the farmyard. The second floor control center of the underground shelter. Suwu connected to the inventory management system opened by the official shelter through a satellite network. After receiving the second contribution value advance from the official shelter, Suwu's contribution value has reached 2 million. Suwu did not spend any money on this contribution value. I just used it to buy 2 items. It is also a new radiation-proof coating formula worth 1.5 million contribution value. The other is a batch of special phosphors with a total value of 500,000. That phosphor is extracted from a plant originating from other continents and is the main raw material used to make radiation-proof coatings. Purchase successfully. Closing square bracket. The radiation-proof coating formula has been shipped. Please pay attention to check the relevant documents. Closing square bracket. Special phosphors are out of stock and packaged. Closing square bracket. Please collect it in 2 hours at the official shelter No. 1 Hongqiao Station warehouse. Closing square bracket. Click to open the radiation-proof coating formula shipped on the spot. Suwu browsed it quickly. The content on the recipe is not complicated. Apart from special phosphors, the materials are all very common things. The only problem is that the manufacturing process is very complicated. Various special instruments are required to cooperate with each other. Basically, a high-end chemistry laboratory has to be built specifically for it to be truly configured. The requirements are quite high. Suwu raised his eyebrows and felt the sinister intentions of the official. If it were a refuge with less comprehensive industrial manufacturing capabilities. After hard work to exchange this recipe, I may have to spend a lot of money to buy a set of equipment specially used for the production of paint from the official. This time, it is almost equivalent to recovering a massive amount of contribution value at an extremely low cost. I checked the prices of the official warehouse-related equipment. Sure enough, it was not beyond expectations. The price of each unit is significantly greater than its due value and is an official tool used to cut leaks. Chapter 79 Micro Mecha. Suwu made a estimation silently. In terms of manufacturing costs alone, this is at least nearly 5 to 6 times the profit. Maybe I can. The considerable profits made Suwu's thoughts come to mind. Anyway, the official does not explicitly prohibit it. I think there should be no problem to secretly build a batch of equipment to compete with the official. But this is just an episode after all. The idea of competition existed in Suwu's mind for a few seconds, and was thrown behind him. Not to mention the current production schedule of the shelter, it has been fully arranged. The radiation detectors being produced alone are no less profitable than selling equipment. There is really no need to squeeze out some valuable productivity to do such things that are neither beneficial nor distracting. Turn off the documentation for the radiation-proof coating formulation. Suwu turned on the surveillance of the manufacturing center. There, CNC machine tools and 3D printers are constantly producing radiation detectors as always. With 2 engineering robots as the main focus, Suwu specially reserved a small part of the productivity. Then there is no longer any ammunition, but is creating various special metal components. It's still an hour or 2 away. The number of metal components was calculated. Suwu was not impatient and continued to wait patiently. In the past 20+ hours, he did not mass-produce solid-state batteries and express-grade drones with great scope of application and modification potential. There is also no new batch of work equipment added to the shelter where labor is lacking everywhere. It's mainly to free up your energy. Create these metal components that are crucial to him as early as possible. More than an hour later, all preset components are created. The two engineering robots began to assemble and weld them again and again. Soon, a miniature mecha about 2.6 meters tall, with humanoid limbs and a middle torso consisting of a hemispherical cockpit, appeared on the manufacturing platform of the manufacturing center. From the appearance, it's a bit like the mecha that appeared in Avatar, Mobile Amplification Platform Armor. But the overall size has been reduced a lot. And the front half of the cockpit is no longer composed of transparent glass. Instead, it is fully covered by heavy metal, full of reassuring solid texture. With a slight excitement and expectation, Suwu stepped into the manufacturing center. Watch it up close. This newly formed miniature mecha looks even more compact, not even much taller than Suwu's. This is not that engineering robots cannot create larger mechas. It is the result of Suwu's purposeful design. On the surface, the upcoming radiation storm has brought unimaginable huge benefits to Suwu. But immediately after the storm, a radiation disaster that may break out at any time. But it was always like the sword of Damocles, hanging high above Suwu's head, making him anxious. According to the worst-case scenario, Suwu's shelter may not be without the possibility of infiltration and destruction by the radiation disaster. Once that level, it's not certain that Suwu must be prepared to give up everything and escape urgently. And want to escape when the shelter is seriously damaged. It is definitely impossible to succeed with Suwu's own body that has almost never undergone any professional training. He needs a mechanical device that can be worn close to the body and greatly enhances maneuverability and survivability as an assisting tool for escape. According to the original idea, to meet this need, you should start with exoskeleton armor and power armor. However, the exoskeleton armor is light and light, but its defense, the number of weapons it can carry and the survival ability are quite limited. It is only suitable for short-term emergency response, not suitable for long-term travel in the wild to deal with various extreme situations. Power armor is relatively better, but the good ones are limited. Moreover, its wear process is a bit troublesome, and it is difficult to equip it to the body in a short time when an emergency occurs. If there is no auxiliary wearable equipment in the wild, it will be even more troublesome. And on the premise of being unsatisfied. Finally, the mecha entered Suwu's vision. In the general sense, although the mecha is too large and bloated, it does not meet Suwu's most basic requirements. But in reality, no mistakes, one song, one content, 1 in 6, one book, one bar, one reading. No one stipulates that it is necessary to build a mecha that is as huge. And once its size is reduced to the extreme, Suwu suddenly realized that the miniature version of the mecha was the most suitable choice. It has an independent cockpit, and Suwu can quickly enter within a few seconds by opening the hatch door. At the same time, because of the cockpit and seats, the comfort is far greater than that of the power armor. Even if you drive a miniature mecha in the wild for a long time, it won't be too uncomfortable. Even food and drink can be done in the cockpit without risking leaving the mecha. Also because it has a higher load. It can easily carry more weapons and ammunition, and it can be more perfect and even have large-scale survival devices that can be independently circulated. Whether it is fighting or resisting harsh environments, it is far superior to exoskeleton armor and power armor. It's like carrying a miniature shelter with you. Perhaps the only disadvantage is that its cost is destined to be extremely expensive. Perhaps several pieces of power armor and exoskeleton armor combined may not necessarily cost more than micro-mechas. Recalling the motivation for manufacturing, Suwu's eyes continued to patrol the steel guy in front of him. Through the joint crafting of engineering robots, CNC machine tools, and 3D printers. The appearance of this mecha is integrated, and all the details are full of industrial and technological beauty. When people look at it, they will subconsciously believe that it must be a flagship product made by a cutting-edge factory in the future. But in fact, no matter how good the appearance is, its essence is actually no different from the props in role-playing and models for children to play. It still lacks the last and most important step. Use the system's survival point. Come and bring miraculous modifications and upgrades to it. No more hesitation. With his hand, he pressed the metal body in front of him that was almost as smooth as a mirror, and Suwu silently upgraded. In his vision, the originally 3-digit survival point began to drop to 2-digit number at a very fast speed. Finally, it was frozen above 27 o'clock. This huge expenditure figure made Suwu's palm pressing on the body tremble a little. The upgrade fee for a total of 135 survival points almost far exceeds Suwu's largest single sustainment point consumption before. It was even enough to get him back from scratch and rebuild a brand new base comparable to the size of today's shelter. But this is also ignoring the drawings and the lack of a large number of basic materials, and forcibly upgraded far exceeds the cost of the creation of science and technology in the times. Chapter 80 The Same Thinking. Thorn Level Mobile Manned Combat Platform. Model. Micro Mecha. Operation Mode. Mode 1. Thinking at the same frequency. Mode 2. Automatic Driving. Mode 3. Remote Command Remote Control. Main Combat Weapon. 20mm Electromagnetic Sniper Rifle X1. Sub-Weapons. Air Defense Laser Launcher X1, Quad Missile Launcher X2. Melee Weapon. 2.5-meter Light Blade Thermal Cutting Knife. Accessor Components. Low Altitude Auxiliary Thruster X2, Electromagnetic Shield Generator X1, Phased Array Radar X1, Optical Stealth X1, Advanced Tactical Computer X1, Stealth Unmanned Reconnaissance Aircraft X2, Self-Circulation Survival Device. Power Source. High-energy battery pack 20,000 degrees. Put down the hand holding the micro mech. Suwu's thoughts moved slightly. After this upgrade, the mecha cockpit door, which had almost no changes in appearance, immediately raised upwards, revealing the interior seats and operating table. Suwu raised his legs and stepped in and sat down. I found that the feeling of sitting inside the cockpit was basically the same as the experience of sitting in the driving seat of a family car. The space is not too spacious, but it is definitely enough. It can make people perform various operations on the micro mecha in the most comfortable posture. After adapting to the cockpit environment a little, Suwu activated the combat mode of the micro mecha. The raised hatch cover of the mecha cockpit began to fall slowly and close. Suwu's vision showed a moment of darkness, and then returned to normal. At this time, within his vision, he could still see the walls of the manufacturing center ahead and the engineering robot next to him without any obstacles. But the rows of light green numbers and symbols that represent the state of the mecha, as well as icons representing the various attachment components of the mecha. But he can also know that he is already under the most tight protection of the micro mecha. The picture I see now is nothing more than the camera of the mecha, which synchronizes the scenes captured by the outside world onto the screen in the cabin. Stand up. Suwu silently recited in his heart. Then the picture in front of him moved slightly, and the angle that was originally close to the engineering robot next to him turned into a slight downward look at him. This is the main control mode of the micro mecha, and its thinking is the same frequency. Inside the cockpit of the miniature mecha, any idea of Suwu can be transmitted to the advanced tactical computer on the mecha in real time without any obstacles, allowing it to manipulate the mecha to perform corresponding actions simultaneously. Then, Suwu tried to control the miniature mecha in this way and moved a few times in the control center. The feedback result gave Suwu an extremely smooth feeling. It was as if the mecha had become an extension of his body, even more flexible and free than his own body. The body still has considerable strength, and physical strength and strength limitations, but the miniature mecha is almost gone. Its limit is the limit that machinery and materials can withstand. Go out and give it a try. After gradually becoming proficient in operation, Suwu began to feel a little dissatisfied with the small space in the control center. I plan to go to the surface to test the true performance of the micro mecha. And the thought arose. The door leading to the outside of the control center begins to open immediately. This is Suwu's idea, which is passed on to the tactical computer of the micro mecha, and then the tactical computer is forwarded to the artificial intelligence that controls the shelter, allowing the artificial intelligence to control the shelter to open the relevant isolation door. The whole process seems a bit complicated, but in fact it is almost unstoppable. This made Suwu feel at this moment that shelter became an extension of his body. Manipulate the miniature mecha, ride the lifting platform, and arrive at the end of the exit passage. While waiting for the outermost gate to open, Su Wu activated the optical invisible device, an auxiliary component of the mecha. The light near the outer layer of the entire micro-mecha began to gradually distort. In less than half a second, it was completely integrated into the surrounding environment, and no trace was seen anymore. Just simply distorting the light, deceiving the vision. The quality of the mecha itself is still there. There is a certain shielding effect on some radar detection, but this is because of the material properties of the micro-mecha itself. Infrared detection is also because of the self-circulation and survival device. It has nothing to do with invisibility. Connect to a camera in the shelter exit passage. Su Wu observed the miniature mecha that entered the invisible state from the outside. Judging from the picture alone, its invisibility is almost flawless. It's like it's really turned into a ghost that doesn't exist. However, the artificial intelligence of the shelter can still flow abnormally through the air in the channel. Easy to lock the position of the miniature mecha. Also, in the invisible state, the movement speed cannot be too fast. No mistakes, one song, one content, 1 in 6, one book, one bar, one reading. When the weapon is activated, the invisibility will also fail. This is the instructions given in the relevant operating manuals in the database provided by the tactical computer. Overall, the effect of the optical invisible device is not as amazing as it was at first sight. There are many restrictions. However, it still belongs to a technology that far exceeds the times and has entered the category of science fiction. Master this invisible ability. Su Wu's miniature mecha will have great initiative and first-hand advantage in any place related to combat in the future. As long as you are not too careless, basically no one can do anything to him. Stay invisible. Step out of the exit bunker. No one of the busy crowds on the surface noticed his appearance. Su Wu randomly found a direction and left at a low speed of 2 meters per second. Then, after leaving everyone's sight, immediately pull the speed of the miniature mecha to the maximum. In an instant, the running power of the miniature mecha soared. It was like a human-shaped metal monster running wildly among the rugged hills and rocks. The invisible effect that envelopes it also fails on the spot as it speeds up. The maximum speed is 70 kilometers per hour. Take a look at the real-time speed in the screen. This speed is actually not low. Especially on the rocky beaches covered with obstacles, it gives people a feeling of speeding up. However, because the miniature mecha itself has an excellent shock absorption system, Su Wu could not feel that he was moving at all. Only when you climb or land vertically from the hills can you detect the movement of the mecha from the slightly weightless body feeling. He controlled the miniature mecha and ran on the land for a while. Su Wu started to start the 2 low-altitude auxiliary thrusters of the miniature mecha with some dissatisfaction. Along with a clear thrust, Su Wu's perspective in front quickly rose up, and all the scenery below began to quickly retreat backwards. His miniature mecha, driven by low-altitude auxiliary thrusters, jumped from the ground into the air dozens of meters high. Then, at a speed of more than 300 kilometers per hour, he briefly glided forward for nearly 1 kilometer before falling back onto the ground. Thank you for watching. Continue exploring the fascinating world of Chinese novels with us. Hit that subscribe button on Chinese Novel Audiobook to stay updated with our latest stories, and never miss out on a great listen.